My brother forced me to fund his startup and cousin's wedding. When I refused, he turned the wedding into my trial, in front of 300 guests, and paid. I always knew Ethan would ruin something one day. I just didn't think it would be my reputation or that he'd do it in front of 300 people while wearing a rented tux and holding a stolen mic. But I should have seen it coming. I've seen the warning signs since we were teenagers. The arrogance, the deflection, the way our parents acted like every failure of his was somehow someone else's fault. Usually mine. I'm Rachel, 34, single, bakery owner, chronic overachiever according to my mom, and control freak according to Ethan. What I am, honestly, is tired. Tired of pretending our family dynamic isn't toxic. Tired of forgiving people who never apologize. And very, very tired of Ethan showing up with his latest scheme and expecting me to bankroll it out of loyalty. But let me back up to the day it all exploded. It was my cousin Lydia's wedding, a classic Charleston affair dripping in Southern elegance and old money charm. White roses cascaded down spiral staircases. Jazz trio playing under a magnolia tree. Past hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. The whole thing felt like something out of Southern Living magazine if Southern Living had a category for emotional landmines disguised as family reunions. I was seated at table 6, with a view of the marsh, and just enough distance from my parents to breathe. The only reason I was even there was because Lydia and I had grown up close. She was one of the few in the family who actually supported my bakery when I started it 10 years ago in a tiny strip mall, baking out of a rented kitchen and selling scones at farmers markets. My business, Sweetbriar Bakehouse, is now one of the most sought-after custom cake shops in Charleston. I've catered for mayors, for art gallery openings, and yes, even Lydia's wedding cake, 7 tiers, all hand-painted in edible watercolor. It was my gift to her, and for a moment, standing there in my navy blue dress, glass of Prosecco in hand, I felt proud. Not just of the cake, but of how far I'd come. How I'd built something real. Something of mine. Then Ethan showed up. He breezed in late, of course, with his newest girlfriend Jade on his arm. She wore a glittery dress about 2 sizes too tight, and looked like she had stepped out of a reality show audition line. Ethan was all charm, hugs and backslaps, acting like the golden child while our parents beamed like royalty watching their heir arrive at court. He gave me that smile. The one he uses when he wants something. "Rach," he said, pulling me into a one-armed hug like we were besties. "This cake is insane. You really outdid yourself." "Thanks," I said cautiously. "Glad you like it." Then he leaned in and dropped the bomb like he was just asking me to pass the salt. "I've got a business idea. You're gonna love it. We just need a small investment from you. A couple $100,000. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" He grinned like it was a joke. "I'll explain later. Let's find a quiet spot." "No," I said firmly. "You can explain it now." He chuckled and looked around, as if the concept of being told no was foreign. "Come on, don't be like that. This is a game changer. Jade and I are working with some guys from Atlanta. They've got this idea to combine food delivery, AI and blockchain. We're calling it BiteChain." I stared at him, mouth slightly open. "You want me to give you $250,000 for a food crypto app?" He actually had the nerve to look offended. "It's more than that. We're revolutionizing the future of dining. It's not just food, it's technology. It's a legacy. And we're family, so I figured—" "You figured wrong," I said, cutting him off. "This isn't happening, Ethan." He took a step back, blinking like he'd been slapped. "You don't even want to hear the pitch?" "I don't fund fantasies, I run a real business. You should try it sometime." That should have been the end of it. A simple rejection. But Ethan doesn't reject it. He retaliates. He smiled. That fake, dangerous smile he gets when he's plotting something. "You really think you're better than the rest of us now, huh? Just because you sell overpriced cupcakes to rich people?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. My silence enraged him more than any insult could. I turned and walked away, not realizing that the next time I'd see his face it would be under the glare of a spotlight, standing at the mic during the toasts. When the DJ announced it was time for speeches, I expected the usual. The father of the bride, the best man, maybe Lydia herself. What I didn't expect was Ethan casually grabbing the mic after the groom's brother finished. "Before we all get too drunk," he said with a grin, "I just want to say a few words about family." My stomach dropped. Ethan had no role in the wedding. He wasn't a groomsman. He wasn't close to Lydia. He wasn't even invited to speak. But there he was on the mic commanding 300 people's attention. "Some people in this family," he began, "love to pretend they did everything on their own. But what they don't tell you is how much they took from the rest of us to get there. The guests tittered nervously. A few heads turned in my direction. I felt a heat rising in my neck, a prickling in my palms. "I'm talking about Rachel," Ethan said, lifting his glass. "The self-made baker. The hometown hero. Except none of it would have happened without the family recipes she stole from Grandma May, recipes that were passed down to both of us. That belongs to all of us." Murmurs rippled across the room like thunder. "And now," he continued, "she won't even invest in a real business that could lift this whole family up. Nah. She'd rather hoard her money and act like she's better than us." I was frozen. Humiliated. Exposed. My parents didn't stop him. In fact, they nodded. And across the room, one woman slowly put down her wine glass. Judge Alana Reeves. Retired, powerful, and seated just 6 feet from me. She looked at me not with pity, but with something colder. Calculation. And in that moment, I realized Ethan may have started this fire. But he had no idea who he was about to burn. There's a special kind of silence that follows betrayal, not quiet, but charged. Thick. Heavy. Like the moment before a storm when the air feels electric and the trees stop moving. That's what the room felt like after Ethan's toast. No one clapped. No one laughed. But no one stopped him either. He stood there, all smirking confidence, raising his glass like he'd just delivered a punchline. Meanwhile, I sat at table 6, ice melting in my untouched drink, staring at a man I used to call my brother. I felt my fingers shaking not out of fear, but fury. And not even because of what Ethan said. I could handle his cheap shots, his passive-aggressive jabs about success. I'd been dealing with that for years. What broke me was our parents. My mother Patricia looked proud. Not a trace of shock on her face. Just that smug little smile she wore when Ethan got away with something, like when he crashed her car at 18 and somehow I got grounded for it, or when he drained his college fund gambling and she asked if I could spot him from my bakery's emergency account. And my father? Well, he just kept sipping his bourbon like none of this was unusual, like public character assassination was part of the evening program. I took a breath, slow and steady. Judge Alana Reeves hadn't taken her eyes off me. Not in judgment, but in recognition. She knew. She knew what this was. Maybe not the whole story, but enough to see it wasn't just a toast. It was an ambush. I stood up. Not because I had something to prove to Ethan. But because I was done letting anyone speak for me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice louder than I intended. "Since apparently this is open mic night, I'll say a few words." A few gasps. One person clapped awkwardly. I took the mic from Ethan with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. "Thanks for the introduction, little brother. Very inspiring." Ethan stepped aside, clearly not expecting me to respond. He looked rattled, just for a second. I turned to the crowd. "Hi everyone. I'm Rachel Whitmore. Some of you know me. Some of you know my cupcakes. And some of you, I guess, just found out I'm the family villain." A few nervous chuckles. I continued, voice even. "Since Ethan brought up our late Grandma May and her recipes, I'd like to set the record straight. Yes, I use some of her techniques. Everyone in this family does. But I'm the one who spent a decade perfecting those recipes. I'm the one who got up at 3 a.m. every day for 5 years. I'm the one who maxed out my credit cards, burned out ovens, ruined batches, cried over failed crusts, and kept going anyway." Jade, Ethan's girlfriend, rolled her eyes. I ignored her. "You know what Ethan did during that time? He dropped out of 2 colleges, started 4 different businesses that all failed, borrowed thousands from our parents, and never paid a cent back. And now he wants me to invest in ByteChain, his crypto food app." There were audible snorts from the crowd. At least 2 cousins shook their heads in disbelief. But when I said no politely, mind you, he decided to smear me. In public. At a wedding. Because that's what entitled people do when someone sets a boundary. My voice cracked just a little, but I held steady. And the worst part? My parents encouraged it. They always have. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I could feel their disapproval tightening like a noose behind me. They cheered him on when he called me greedy. When I bought my first commercial kitchen, they told me not to brag. When my bakery made the city's top 10 list, they said Ethan just needed time to shine. When I finally paid off my loans, they asked if I could buy Ethan a car. More gasps now. A few shocked glances in their direction. "So here's my toast," I said, raising my glass. To everyone in this room who's ever been told to dim their light for someone else's comfort, to every woman who worked her ass off only to be called selfish, and to every so-called family member who watched it happen and stayed silent. Then I turned to Ethan. You want to sue me for recipes? Go ahead. You'll lose. I've got copyrights, timelines, records, witnesses, and a very patient attorney. He paled slightly. And Judge Reeves, I added, turning toward her with a small smile. Thanks for your support over the years. The almond croissants were always your favorite, weren't they? She smiled, cool, sharp, and dangerous. Still are. The crowd's energy shifted instantly. Suddenly it wasn't Ethan who looked powerful. It was me. After I handed the mic back to the best man who looked like he wanted to melt into the floor, I walked off stage without another word. People avoided my eyes. A few looked stunned. One aunt clapped slowly. Lydia, bless her, rushed over and whispered, I'm so sorry. I had no idea he was going to do that. It's not your fault, I said. He's always been like this. I just never let anyone see it before. As I passed Ethan, I saw the crack in his mask, the twitch in his jaw, the desperation creeping in behind the swagger. He hadn't expected me to fight back. He never does. He thought if he humiliated me enough, I'd fold. But something had broken open in me. A dam. A silence I'd held my entire adult life. I wasn't going back to that. And neither was he. 3 days after the wedding, I was elbows deep in a batch of blackberry lavender scones when I got served, literally. A man in a rumpled blazer walked into my bakery just after opening, asked for a lemon tart, then handed me a thick envelope with my name on it. Rachel Whitmore? He asked, as if he didn't already know. I nodded, flour on my hands, heart sinking. You've been served. My assistant Melanie, who had just started the espresso machine, froze mid-shot. Please tell me that was a prank. It wasn't. Inside the envelope? A lawsuit. Ethan was suing me for intellectual property theft, claiming I had exploited shared family heritage for personal financial gain, and owed him 49% of my business plus damages. 49%. Not 50. Just enough to control things while pretending I still had a say. The worst part. Attached to the complaint were statements from my own parents. My mother, in black ink, had written that both Rachel and Ethan grew up baking together and it was always understood the family recipes were communal property. My father added that Rachel wouldn't be successful without the family's influence. No mention of the 14-hour shifts, of the times I cried alone in my car when rent was due and the power had been shut off. No acknowledgement of the years I worked without a paycheck so I could afford one more convection oven. Just a narrative that I owed Ethan because of my family. Melanie, ever the sarcastic one, whispered, Wow. They really said, congrats on your success, now hand it over. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because for the first time since the wedding, I felt numb. I didn't cry that night. I did something worse. I doubted myself. What if they were right? What if I had taken more than I realized? Grandma May did teach us both how to knead dough. Even if Ethan mostly played video games while I wrote recipes on index cards. Was my bakery built on stolen heritage? I sat in my dark apartment, rereading every sentence of the complaint, trying to find truth in their accusations. And then? I opened my Dropbox archive. Years of photos, emails, dated test batches, ingredient spreadsheets, and handwritten feedback notes from customers. Every single step of my bakery's evolution was documented. I wasn't just a good baker. I was meticulous. And I realized something. I had receipts. Literal ones. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Fiona McTavish, a no-nonsense commercial litigator known for her courtroom venom and her love of black coffee with no cream. After reading the lawsuit, she looked at me over her tortoiseshell glasses and said, This is a tantrum disguised as litigation, and we're going to bury it. Are you sure? I asked. They really made it sound like I exploited the family. Fiona didn't blink. If every Southern bakery got sued every time someone used their grandma's peach cobbler recipe, half of Charleston would be bankrupt. This isn't about recipes, Rachel. This is about control. I nodded slowly. You stood up to them, she added. Now they're trying to punish you. Something in my chest cracked open. Not pain, not fear, clarity. Fiona leaned back, folding her arms. We're not settling. We're not compromising. We're going to discover. Are you good with that? I thought of Ethan's smug toast. My mother's betrayal. My father's silence. I thought of Judge Alana Reeves, who sent me a one-line text that night. If you need a witness, I'm available. I looked Fiona dead in the eye and said, let's burn the kitchen down. The pre-trial phase was brutal. Ethan's lawyer, a smooth-talking baby-face type with more Instagram followers than courtroom wins, tried to paint me as a manipulative career woman who used nostalgia for profit. He actually said I had weaponized sentimentality for capitalist gain. Meanwhile, Fiona built a case so airtight it could have survived a hurricane. We submitted recipe books dated back to 2010 with my original notes and ingredient tweaks. Bank records showing zero financial contribution from Ethan or my parents. Emails where Ethan himself referred to Sweetbriar as Rachel's thing. A signed NDA from my first investor, listing me as sole founder. Even social media posts showing Ethan mocking my bakery in its early days. And then we pulled our ace. Judge Alana Reeves submitted an affidavit. She confirmed she'd been a customer for years, had personally spoken to me about the challenges of starting a business alone, and had witnessed the outburst at the wedding. Her final line? What I saw was not a sibling dispute. It was public humiliation targeted at a successful woman by those closest to her. When Fiona read it aloud, I nearly cried. Ethan's legal team tried to backpedal. They requested mediation. They wanted a mutual resolution. But the damage was done. My story had spread from Charleston gossip circles to legal blogs to a viral TikTok someone made out of the wedding speech video. The world wasn't laughing at me anymore. They were rooting for me. A week before the court hearing, Ethan called me. Blocked number. I only picked up because I was mid-frosting and thought it might be a supplier. Rachel, he said, voice low and pitiful. Can we talk? No, I said flatly. Please. I didn't want it to go this far. You sued me. I was angry. You embarrassed me. You made me look like a joke. You did that all by yourself, Ethan? Silence. Then, if we drop the case, can you just give me a loan? I'm in debt now. Jade left. Mom and Dad are pissed. Everyone thinks I'm a scammer. I paused. I looked around my kitchen, smelled sugar and butter in the air, heard the soft ding of the oven timer. I don't think you're a scammer, I said softly. I think you're a coward who tried to steal from someone who never owed you anything. Then I hung up. The day of the hearing I wore white. Not cream, not eggshell white. The same color as the walls of my bakery. The frosting on my signature wedding cake. The apron Grandma May used to tie around my waist when I was 6 years old and helped her roll biscuit dough. I didn't wear it to be symbolic. I wore it because I wanted to remind myself, I have nothing to hide. The Charleston County Courthouse was buzzing. A handful of people I didn't recognize sat in the gallery, probably local reporters. There'd been chatter online after the wedding speech video went viral. Some TikTok influencer dubbed me, the cupcake queen who clapped back. Cute. I wasn't there for them. I was there to put Ethan's fantasy to rest, the one where he gets rewarded for showing up late, taking shortcuts and calling it innovation. Ethan arrived looking like a drowned rat in a borrowed suit. His hair was slicked back. Jade was gone. No parents in sight. Apparently, they even had the good sense to stay out of the public fallout. My lawyer Fiona leaned over and whispered, "He looks like he read the affidavit." I smiled. Hope he choked on it. The judge, not Reeves, but a quiet, sharp-eyed woman named Valerie Grant called the session to order. Ethan's lawyer went first. He spoke with affected calm, describing Ethan as a visionary, who'd been emotionally wounded by exclusion from a family legacy. He said my bakery used intellectual property passed down through generations, and Ethan, as a descendant, had a reasonable claim to joint equity. Fiona leaned over again. If he says generational trauma, I swear I'll object on grounds of TikTok terminology. Then it was our turn. Fiona opened like a lit match dropped into gasoline. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. She walked through a timeline of my business, from the day I filed for a business license to the first 5-figure catering job I booked. She introduced my ingredient logs, recipe books, and photos of me hauling flour bags twice my size. She entered into evidence an email chain from Ethan in 2017 calling my bakery, that cupcake thing. But the moment everything turned, the moment Ethan's fantasy began to crack, was during cross-examination. Fiona called Ethan to the stand. He swaggered up like he was walking onto a podcast set. "Mr. Whitmore," Fiona began, "can you describe your financial contribution to Sweetbriar Bakehouse?" I wasn't officially an investor, but... So that's a no? I supported her in other ways. Such as... He blinked. Encouragement. Advice. Emotional support. My stomach turned. Ethan wouldn't know emotional support if it came frosted with sprinkles. Did you ever write any recipes used in Sweetbriar's menu? Well, Grandma taught both of us. Please answer the question, Mr. Whitmore. Did you contribute any recipes? No. Did you ever work a shift? Bake a cake? Wash a dish? No. Did you promote the bakery? Lend your name? Connect Rachel to investors? No. Have you, at any point, referred to the bakery as Rachel's thing? He hesitated. Yeah, I guess. Would you like me to show you the email where you said that verbatim? He swallowed. No need. Fiona turned, slow and theatrical, facing the gallery. No further questions. The judge asked Ethan's lawyer if he had any witnesses. He mumbled something about family support, then asked for a short recess. They never returned. Ethan's case unraveled faster than wet fondant. That night, the judge issued a statement. Case dismissed with prejudice, which meant not only was the lawsuit dead, Ethan couldn't bring it again. It was over. I stood outside the courthouse blinking against the afternoon sun, Fiona beside me, the verdict still echoing in my chest. A few reporters hovered nearby, microphones out, waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I didn't need to. Let the judgment speak for itself. That night I went back to the bakery after hours. The shop was dark and still smelled like lemon curd and burnt sugar. I sat at my little office desk in the back, staring at the framed photo of Grandma May on the wall. She was holding a pecan pie and wearing her apron, the white one. Her eyes crinkled in that way they did when she was proud. I touched the frame lightly. I kept it mine. I whispered. And for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally realized I'd won more than just a lawsuit. I'd finally broken the cycle. The next morning, a courier showed up with a small package. No sender. Inside was a slice of wedding cake in a plastic container, the one I'd made for Lydia's wedding, with a sticky note that read, "For the real recipe keeper. A fan." I smiled. Then I opened my email inbox. 15 new client requests, 3 interview invitations, and 1 message from Judge Alana Reeves. Subject: Thought you might like this. Attachment: Screenshot of a private Charleston Law Society group chat. Message: I told them you were the best baker in town. Now they all want almond croissants. 3 weeks after the court hearing, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message, her voice soft, unsure, like someone trying to act warm in a cold room. Rachel, we were just hoping to talk. Your father's, well, we're all very upset about what happened. Ethan made some poor choices. But family's family. Maybe it's time we move on. Move on. That was rich, considering they never actually moved with me to begin with. They were always waiting at the finish line, demanding credit for a race I ran alone. The next day a letter arrived in my bakery's mailbox, handwritten. 3 pages. Ethan's handwriting. He wrote that he was sorry, that he'd messed up, that he let pressure and pride get in the way, that Jade had left him, his name was kind of blacklisted in tech circles, and he was thinking of moving back home. He ended it with, maybe we could start fresh. Maybe I could help with the bakery. I know we've had our differences, but we're still siblings, right? Right. I sat with that letter in my hands for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just remembered. I remembered Ethan's toast. The look on his face when he said I owed him. The way my parents nodded. They laughed from the back of the room. I remembered standing alone in that ballroom with 300 eyes on me and not one hand reaching to hold mine. I remembered the slap I never got, but felt all the same. So I placed the letter back in the envelope, returned it to the sender unopened. And for good measure, I attached a sticky note. This kitchen doesn't need another thief. That should have been the end. But karma, she likes sequels. The following Sunday, I was restocking the macaron display when Melanie ran in holding her phone, eyes wide. Rachel, you have to see this. It was a local news article. Title: Whitmore Family Bakery Scandal. What really happened behind that viral wedding speech? Apparently, someone had leaked the full transcript of the court documents. Maybe a court clerk. Maybe Fiona. Maybe Karma herself. Every detail was in there. The false claims, the wedding video, the judge's statement, even a quote from an unnamed source. I had a guess who, saying, he thought she'd fold. Instead, she baked him into a corner. It exploded online. Again. But this time, the narrative wasn't just about drama. It was about boundaries, about ownership, about Women who refuse to be robbed quietly. Messages poured in. DMs from women saying they saw themselves in me. Emails from small business owners sharing stories about relatives who tried to buy in after the hard work was done. Even a therapist messaged me asking if I'd consider being on a podcast about family betrayal. I didn't respond to most of them. But I read every word. Because for the first time in my life, I felt seen. 1 month later, the holidays arrived. The Whitmore family usually did a big thing: long table, fake harmony, matching sweaters that itched like guilt. Not this year. I got a single email from my mother. No subject line. Just one sentence. Are you really going to spend Christmas alone? I stared at it. Then I hit reply. Number, I'm spending it in peace. Then I booked a weekend cabin with Melanie and her girlfriend, made mulled wine, and watched the snow fall outside the window while we toasted to cutting ties that no longer fed us. 6 months passed. The bakery flourished. I launched a seasonal menu, opened a second location downtown, and partnered with a women's shelter to host baking workshops for survivors. At night, sometimes I stood at the window of my apartment with a glass of wine and looked out over Charleston, lights glittering like a city that had finally opened its arms to me. Not because of a scandal, but because I had finally stopped shrinking. And then, one quiet evening, it happened. A knock at the bakery door after closing. It was him. Ethan. He looked small. Not physically. But everything else about him had shrunk: the bravado, the smugness, the "I deserve this" energy. Just a man standing in the wreckage he created, hoping someone would help him sweep it up. I'm not here to fight, he said. I wanted to say it in person. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. I didn't move. He took a deep breath. You were right. About everything. I didn't build anything. I just thought, if I couldn't make something of my own, I'd take part of yours. He looked down at his shoes. But you didn't let me. And you shouldn't have. You fought harder than I ever could have. Still, I said nothing. I'm not asking for anything. He added quickly. I wanted you to know I get it now. That's all. He waited. I stared at him for a long time. Then finally I nodded once. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. He nodded too. Then he left. That was the last time I saw him. Sometimes I wonder if he meant it, if he ever really got it. But most of the time, I don't wonder at all. Because I stopped needing answers from people who only show up to take. I still have the bakery. I still have peace. And I still have the recipes. Not the ones from Grandma May's old tin box. The ones I wrote by hand after burning 50 batches. The ones I perfected through 3 a.m. taste tests and small-town rejection and pure stubbornness. The ones I earned. And no one gets to take those away from me. Not anymore. My cousin stole $12,000 from our grandma and blamed me. My whole family believed him until I exposed everything in court, 3 years later. I never thought my own blood would stab me in the back over money, especially not when the money belonged to the one person who loved us both unconditionally. But I guess grief brings out the truth in people. And my family? The truth was a whole lot uglier than I ever imagined. Before all this, we were what you'd call a tight-knit family, at least that's what we told people. Christmas at Aunt Linda's, 4th of July barbecues in Uncle Mike's backyard, group vacations to Lake Geneva every summer. On the surface it looked like we were one of those picture-perfect suburban clans you see in cheesy Hallmark movies. But if you looked closer, you'd see the cracks. You'd see the way Aunt Linda constantly pits her son Brandon and me against each other. Look how well Brandon dresses, maybe you should try that. Or, Brandon got another scholarship. What are you doing with your life? You'd see the way she dominated every family gathering like a queen with a plastic crown and a wine glass that never emptied. You'd notice how my mom and her younger sister always smiled too hard at Linda's insults, like she was trying to hold the family peace with gritted teeth and clenched fists. And then there was Grandma Ruth, our anchor, our protector. The only one who saw through all the pettiness and still managed to love everyone despite it. She was the kind of woman who made Sunday dinners feel sacred and knew how to make you feel important, even when the rest of the world treated you like background noise. She was my biggest supporter, especially after my dad walked out when I was 12. She'd show up to my school plays, help me buy secondhand suits for interviews, slip me cash when she knew mom was too proud to ask for help. She never missed a birthday, never forget a milestone, and when she got sick, I was the one who took time off work to help take care of her. Brandon didn't even visit her in the hospital until the third week of her chemo. Too busy with internships, he said. But guess who got the biggest slice of the inheritance? I should back up a bit. Grandma passed in March of 2020. It wasn't sudden, we'd been bracing for it since late 2019, but that didn't make it hurt any less. COVID had just started locking things down, and the funeral was a small graveside service with masks and awkward elbow bumps instead of hugs. I delivered the eulogy. I barely made it through without crying. Brandon showed up late, wearing sunglasses and a Rolex. He gave me a bro hug I didn't return, and acted like we were still kids sharing bunk beds at Grandma's lake house. But the second she was on the ground, something shifted. The whispers began. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Aunt Linda. "You need to return the money, Logan." At first I thought she was joking. "What money?" She sighed, in that condescending, disappointed way she'd perfected over the years. "Don't play dumb. We know you accessed Grandma's estate account. The trustees said $12,000 is missing and the bank records point to you." I swear to God, I laughed out loud. Because it was that absurd. "Are you serious right now?" "I don't think it's funny," she snapped. "This is felony theft, Logan, your grandmother's legacy. You should be ashamed of yourself." I was stunned. Frozen. My brain couldn't even compute what she was saying. It felt like I was watching a horror movie. From the inside of someone else's body. "I didn't touch her money," I said slowly, like I was explaining it to a child. "Then how do you explain the wire transfer?" "What wire transfer?" Linda hung up without answering. An hour later, my phone exploded with texts. From cousins. Aunts. Even my own mother. "Why would you do this to Grandma? You need to return the money before we press charges. Don't bother showing up for Thanksgiving." I tried to call. Nobody picked up. I went to Mom's apartment. She wouldn't even open the door. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own family," she said through the peephole. "Just go." Just like that, I became the family pariah. I kept waiting for someone to ask me what really happened, to give me the benefit of the doubt, to say, "This doesn't sound like Logan. He took care of Grandma. He was there." But no one did. Brandon, meanwhile, went radio silent. Didn't call, didn't text, didn't even pretend to check in, and somehow no one found that suspicious. So I did what any sane, falsely accused person would do. I requested the financial records from the estate lawyer, logged every transaction, and started tracing the digital footprint of that $12,000. What I found made my blood go cold. What I found made my blood run cold. The estate lawyer had mailed me a packet of the final disbursement records and a copy of the wire transfer logs. I don't think he expected me to actually comb through it line by line, but I did. I was desperate. There it was. A transfer for $12,000 sent 4 days after Grandma died. Authorized by a digital signature that wasn't mine, from a local IP address that when I ran it through a friend's tech tools mapped to an apartment complex in Evanston. Not my address. But Brandon's. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Then I went back through my messages, digging up the one awkward selfie he'd sent the family from his new place in Evanston that he was so proud of. I compared the date of that post to the date of the transfer. It was 2 days after he moved in. He'd stolen the money after settling in and used Grandma's name and estate login to authorize it. Now here's the kicker. Brandon had a degree in finance. He'd done an internship at a private wealth firm in the city. He knew exactly how estate distributions worked. He knew how to make it look clean. He thought no one would notice. And when someone did, he blamed me. At first, I wanted to storm over to his condo and throw the evidence in his smug face. I wanted to punch that phony Rolex right off his wrist. I wanted to scream at Aunt Linda, make her eat every smug word she'd spit at me over the phone. But I didn't. Because I realized something important. They wanted a monster. Brandon gave them one. They never stopped to ask if it was real. So fine. Let them believe I'm the villain for a while. Let them choke on it. Instead of blowing up, I did something else. I went quiet. Silent. I didn't respond to texts. Didn't defend myself. I moved into a cheaper apartment, worked 2 jobs retail during the day, and rideshare at night. I even skipped Thanksgiving and Christmas that year. No awkward dinners. No glares across the table. No Aunt Linda whispering fake concern. But every spare hour I had, I documented. I made spreadsheets. Printed copies of IP logs. Highlighted account authorizations, downloaded public LinkedIn posts, grabbed screenshots of Brandon's social media bragging about his luxury condo, and work-from-home startup consulting firm. Because you know what they say, receipts talk. And I wasn't just planning to clear my name. I was going to burn him down. It took almost 8 months to collect everything I needed. I consulted with a legal aid clinic downtown and found a young lawyer who had just passed the bar and was hungry for a case. When I showed him the files, he blinked at me like I'd just handed him the script for a Netflix thriller. "Logan, this is theft. Straight up fraud. You can absolutely go to court with this." "But can I win?" He looked at me, dead serious. "You can do more than win. You can bury him." I filed suit in civil court, fraudulent misrepresentation and financial damages. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mom. Not my siblings. Definitely not Aunt Linda. The subpoena hit Brandon's condo like a missile on a Thursday morning in early June. Aunt Linda called me 3 hours later, breathless. "What the hell are you doing?" I was at work at the time. I calmly stepped into the break room and said, "Filing a lawsuit. What does it look like?" "You're tearing this family apart." "Number Brandon did that. I'm just holding the flashlight." She hung up. Typical. Brandon hired a lawyer, of course. A flashy one. Expensive suit, big promises. They tried to play it like the whole thing was a misunderstanding, that maybe Grandma had intended to give him the money, or that she mentioned it verbally. But I had the paper trail. The forged digital signature, the IP logs, the timestamps. The smug Instagram post of him buying a flat-screen TV the day after the money hit his account. It took less than 4 court sessions for the truth to unravel. And watching Brandon squirm on the stand? I won't lie. It felt good. He looked like a scared kid. Gone was the confident, arrogant golden boy. In his place was a man backed into a corner, with no more lies to hide behind. The judge ruled in my favor. Brandon was ordered to repay the $12,000 plus interest and legal fees. The court called it intentional fraud with malice, which meant it would stay on his record for life. But that wasn't the end. Because when word got out, when family members started talking, it didn't take long for the full picture to come into focus. Brandon had borrowed money from at least 3 other relatives over the years. Money that mysteriously never showed up. The whispers became louder. Aunt Linda's reputation took a nosedive. She tried to hold a family meeting to spin the narrative. No one came. Mom finally reached out. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I should have believed you." I didn't say anything. Because apologies don't unburn bridges. Especially not the ones you lit yourself. The thing about people like Aunt Linda is, they never believe consequences apply to them. Even after the court ruling. Even after Brandon was publicly embarrassed and ordered to pay restitution. Even after my name was legally cleared and the judge outright stated I had never accessed Grandma's accounts, Linda still acted like I was the problem. "We shouldn't have aired family business in court," she told my mom. "Logan should have come to us directly." "Come to you? After you iced me out, called me a thief, turned the whole family against me?" Right. But she didn't want reconciliation. She wanted control, and now that her golden boy's halo had shattered, she needed someone else to blame. Someone else to manipulate. Problem was, I wasn't the same person I'd been 3 years ago. I'd spent those years working double shifts, scraping by, rebuilding my self-worth from the ground up. I'd sat alone on birthdays, eaten microwave dinners on Christmas Eve, and watched life go on without me while everyone believed I'd stolen from a dying woman. You don't live through that and come back soft. So when Mom passed along Linda's suggestion that we all move past it for the sake of family, I gave a short, simple reply. "No." She called me that evening. "Logan, sweetie, I just think, don't sweetie me." Long silence. Then, "Your grandmother would have wanted peace." That part made me laugh. Because if Grandma were alive, she'd have smacked Linda with her oxygen tank and handed me a slice of pie while doing it. "She also would have wanted people to stop stealing her money," I said flatly. "What do you want, Linda?" And that's when it happened. Her voice cracked. She told me Brandon hadn't paid a dime yet. That he'd lost his job shortly after the ruling. That his reputation in the Chicago finance world was damaged beyond repair. Apparently no one wants to hire a guy with a public fraud judgment who would have guessed. Worse, she'd co-signed his lease, and his car, and his private student loans. In short, she was screwed, and she wanted me to forgive the debt, make a statement saying it was all a misunderstanding. Let Brandon off the hook so he could rebuild. I nearly dropped the phone from laughing. "You want me, the guy you disowned, slandered, and framed, to fix the mess your son made after he destroyed my life? You're not being fair?" she snapped. "No, Linda, I'm being precise. There's a difference." She started sobbing. For real this time. Or maybe just louder. I don't know. I didn't care. All I could think about was the night I sat alone in a basement apartment eating instant noodles, while the rest of them passed around turkey and wine and talked about how disappointed they were in me. Let her cry. She hung up after saying, "You'll regret this." But the only thing I regretted was not cutting them off sooner. Over the next few months, it all collapsed. Brandon defaulted on the repayment plan. His wages were garnished. He had to break his lease and move back in with Linda, whose retirement savings had been drained trying to fix it. She sold her house. I started working part-time at a dentist's office. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I'd gotten promoted at work, finally had health insurance again, and had just started dating someone I actually saw a future with. She didn't know all the details yet, but she knew enough. And more importantly, she believed me. I even reconnected with my younger sister Maya, the only one who'd reached out after the court ruling and said, "I always had a feeling it wasn't true." We went for coffee. We talked for hours. Laughed like we used to before all the drama. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. One night I came home from work to find a handwritten letter on my doorstep. It was from Brandon. No envelope. Just folded notebook paper and messy handwriting I hadn't seen since we were kids. "I know you'll never believe me, but I'm sorry." I panicked. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I needed the money. And when Aunt Linda found out, she said you'd be the easiest person to pin it on. I never thought it would blow up like this. I'm so sorry. I read it 3 times. Then I lit it on fire in the kitchen sink and watched the ash swirl down the drain. Because sometimes, closure isn't about forgiveness. It's about knowing the truth and choosing to move on anyway. I thought I was done with them. After everything, after the lawsuit, the public embarrassment, Brandon's apology written in Sharpie on crumpled notebook paper, I truly believed that chapter of my life was closed. Then Aunt Linda got cancer, stage 3, aggressive, ovarian. That's what Maya told me. She'd been checking in on Linda occasionally, despite everything, because that's who Maya is, too good for her own damn good. She said Linda wasn't doing well, that the treatments were brutal. Brandon was trying to take care of her, but mostly just hiding in the basement gaming and avoiding bills. "She's not the same," Maya said quietly over coffee one day. "She talks about Grandma a lot, says she regrets how everything went down." I didn't respond. I just stirred my Americano and watched the cream swirl. A week later, Maya texted again. "Linda's asking if you'll visit. Just once. She wants to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put my phone down, turned off notifications, and didn't reply. Because the truth is, I didn't know what I owed her anymore. Closure. Forgiveness. A final face-to-face? Or nothing at all. 3 months passed. Then she died. It was a quiet funeral. Closed casket. Brandon gave the eulogy. I didn't go. Maya did, and she told me it was awkward. Half the family didn't show up. The other half acted like ghosts. Brandon apparently cried. But not many people bought it. A week after the funeral, I got a call from Linda's lawyer. She'd left me something in her will. I almost didn't go. But curiosity has a cruel way of dragging you into rooms you swore you'd never step foot in again. I met the lawyer at a tiny office downtown. He was a soft-spoken man in his 60s with tired eyes and nicotine-stained fingers. He handed me a sealed envelope and said, "She wrote it herself." We didn't open it. I took it home. Sat with it for an hour before opening it. The letter was short. Handwritten, like Brandon's had been, but far neater. "Logan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I won't ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I finally saw it. All of it. What I let happen. What I encouraged. You were never the villain. You were the scapegoat I needed. Because admitting my own son was capable of something so cruel. It broke me. I hope you build a life that is so bright, so full, that no one can ever make you feel small again. Grandma was proud of you. She told me that once, when you weren't around. I didn't want to believe her. But she was right. I left you something. It's not much. Just something of hers. Something I should have given you a long time ago. I'm sorry." Linda folded inside was Grandma's locket. The gold one she wore every Sunday, engraved with the initials of all her grandchildren. When I opened it, I saw a tiny photo of me as a boy on one side, and on the other one of Grandma and me together. I didn't even know that picture existed. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cry. I just sat there. Let the weight of everything settle into the silence. That night, I visited Grandma's grave for the first time in years. It was a cold March evening. Windy, gray. I brought the locket and a single yellow daffodil, her favorite. I stood there and finally said everything I never got to say when they threw me out and smeared my name. All the times I needed her voice and it wasn't there. All the nights I'd cursed the silence and wished just once someone had believed me. I made it, Grandma, I said softly. Not because of them. In spite of them. I placed the locket on the headstone. Just for a minute. Then I tucked it into my coat pocket and walked away. That was a year ago. Today I own my own financial consulting firm. I built it from scratch with a couple of friends who believed in me when no one else did. We work with nonprofits and small businesses, people who've been screwed over by the big guys. Brandon? Last I heard, he moved out of state. Took a customer service job in Florida. Filed for bankruptcy 6 months after Linda died. Still has a fraud judgment on his record. Still blames unfair family drama. I don't care. I have peace now. I don't need revenge. I don't need apologies. I don't even need anyone to say they were wrong. I have my name back. I have my dignity. And I finally understand. Family isn't blood. It's not who shares your last name. It's who shows up when your world burns and says, I'll sit in the ashes with you. So to anyone out there who's ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you the most, you are not alone, and you will rise, even if you have to do it from the ground up. My sister spilled coffee on my 6,500 heirloom wedding dress, then played the victim, so I took my revenge and cut her out of my life. The morning of my wedding, I woke up at 5:42 a.m. hours before my alarm. Not because of nerves or excitement, I just had this feeling. Like something was brewing. A knot I couldn't explain. I lay there in bed at the Rosewood Inn bridal suite, watching the early morning light filter through the curtains, and tried to focus on what the day was supposed to be about. Love. Celebration. Family. That last word caught in my throat a little. Family. Because as much as I wanted this day to be perfect, there was one person who'd made it very clear she wasn't rooting for me. My older sister, Karen. We've never been close. Growing up, Karen was always the star, gorgeous, magnetic, the kind of girl who walked into a room and turned it into her stage. I was the quiet one. The planner. The fixer. The one who picked up her messes while she basked in attention. Still, she was my sister. And despite everything, I always held out hope that someday we'd get past the rivalry and the subtle cruelty she liked to disguise as jokes. But over the past year, ever since I got engaged, things got worse. Karen made snide comments about my ring. Cute, dainty, you always did like safe choices. Laughed off every wedding planning update I excitedly shared, and RSVP'd maybe to both the bridal shower and the rehearsal dinner. But I kept inviting her. Kept including her. I kept hoping. That hope died a slow death the day of my bridal shower. We hosted it at my best friend Tessa's house, just a simple garden party with finger foods and laughter. At first Karen acted gracious, too gracious. She gave me this brittle smile and handed me a gift bag that looked like it had been tossed in the trunk of her car for a week. Inside was a pack of wrinkle-reducing eye masks and a size extra-large white satin robe. I wear a size small. Everyone knew that. Oh, I said, holding up the robe awkwardly. Thanks, Karen. She sipped her mimosa, eyes wide with fake innocence. Well, I figured with the stress, weight and all. The room went silent. I laughed it off. Because that's what I'd been trained to do with Karen. Minimize, redirect, pretend. But something shifted that day. I pulled Tessa aside later and asked her quietly if she'd mind installing a small camera in the bridal suite on the wedding day. Just to make sure everything stayed untampered with. Not because I thought Karen would do anything well, not anything major, but because I didn't trust her not to. Tessa didn't even blink. Got it. Discreet. Done. So on the morning of my wedding, as I sat in a white silk robe, in my actual size, sipping lavender tea and letting the hairstylist pin my curls, I reminded myself, you're prepared. Nothing she does can touch you today. I believed that. Right up until she walked through the door. Hello, bride squad. Karen's voice rang through the suite like a bell you don't want to hear. Every head turned. Tessa's eyes narrowed. My mother froze mid-conversation with the makeup artist. My other bridesmaids all exchanged looks. Karen was in full glam false lashes, waves down to her waist, and a skin-tight blush pink dress that did not read supportive sibling. More like trying to upstage the bride. I wasn't sure I'd make it, she announced, setting down a massive Starbucks cup on the vanity. But I figured, what's a wedding without family, right? I stood slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. Karen. I thought you weren't coming until the ceremony. I couldn't miss seeing you before your big moment. Her smile was too wide. Besides, Mom said your dress is to die for. Where is it? I paused. Every cell in my body said, no. But my mother, bless her oblivious heart, stepped in, clearly desperate for harmony. Oh, it's hanging right over there, she said, pointing to the custom dress bag by the window. It's been altered from your grandmother's gown, remember? She looks like a dream in it. Karen's gaze slid to the bag. Something flickered in her eyes. Wow, she murmured. You really leaned into the vintage vibe, huh? It's special to me, I replied carefully. Grandma wore it in 1954. We had it cleaned, updated, but the lace is original. Well, let me help you get ready, she said too sweetly. We've had our ups and downs, but I want this day to be amazing for you. Before I could answer, she picked up her Starbucks cup and started moving toward the vanity near the dress. Tessa rose from her seat. I've got it, she said lightly. I'll help Mia with the dress. Why don't you catch up with Mom? Karen smiled that tight smile again and backed off just for a moment. But I saw it. The flash of something in her face, not hurt, not disappointed. Something colder. Calculating. That's when I knew. This wasn't over. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, when I stepped into the bathroom for a moment to fix my lipstick, I heard it. Oh my God! A shriek from the bridal suite. I rushed out barefoot. My heart dropped when I saw it. The gown. Laid out, partially unzipped, now with a dark spreading coffee stain right across the bodice and train. Karen was standing nearby, both hands covering her mouth. I didn't mean to, she gasped. My coffee, someone bumped me. No. One touched you, Tessa said quietly. I swear, it just slipped, Karen insisted, eyes wide, trembling slightly. I stared at the gown. The dress I'd spent months restoring. The last piece of my grandmother I had left. Ruined. Or at least, that's what Karen thought. What she didn't know was that everything, every single moment was recorded. I stood frozen, staring at the deep coffee stain soaking through delicate lace and silk. The bridal suite fell silent except for Karen's theatrical gasping. Oh my God, Mia, I'm so sorry, she said again, tears brimming conveniently in her eyes. It was an accident, I swear. I was just trying to move my coffee. With the lid off? Tessa cut in, arms folded tightly. Karen sniffled. It must have been loose. I didn't know. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I just walked slowly toward the dress, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. My mother rushed to my side, her voice shaky. We'll fix it. We'll find someone cleaner. We have time, right? It was 9:12 a.m. The ceremony was at 1. There was no time. I turned to my bridesmaids. Half looked horrified. Half looked furious. Tessa just met my eyes. She did it on purpose, she said softly. Karen gasped, hand flying to her chest. Are you kidding me right now? Tessa didn't flinch. We were all standing in this room. No one bumped you. You were alone near the vanity. And I watched you move the cup next to the dress minutes ago. I was just clearing space. Karen's voice rose, trembled, like she couldn't believe she was being accused. God. I try to make peace and this is what I get? You tried to make a scene, I said, finally breaking my silence. And you got one. Karen turned to me, wounded eyes flashing. I said I was sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. You didn't say why. She blinked. Why what? Why did you really come here today? Why can't you stand the idea of me having one moment that isn't about you? Her jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. I nodded once. Then I turned to Tessa. Plan B. She lit up like she'd been waiting for that signal all morning. On it. She pulled out a sleek garment bag from the back of the suite closet, one we'd hidden behind other dresses and props. The room collectively gasped as she unzipped it, revealing a second gown. Not vintage, not lacy, but stunning. Custom made. Ivory satin, deep V-neck, minimalist silhouette with delicate beading at the waist. Elegant. Strong. Mine. Karen's face went blank. She stared at the dress like it slapped her. What is that? She asked flatly. My actual wedding dress, I said. Calmly. The other one was sentimental, but this is the one I plan to wear if anything unexpected happened. Tessa grinned. And wouldn't you know it? Something unexpected happened. Karen looked like she wanted to scream, but the room was spinning too fast for her to grab control. My bridesmaids swarmed to help me out of the robe. My makeup artist rushed in with a steamer. My mother stood frozen, torn between grief over the ruined heirloom and shock that I had a backup dress at all. "I don't understand," Mom whispered. "You said Grandma's dress was the one." "It was," I said gently. "But after the shower, I got nervous. About what Karen might do." Karen scoffed. "Oh, for God's sake, I didn't ruin your dress on purpose. You're being paranoid." I met her eyes. Calm. Steady. "Good thing I'm also paranoid with receipts." She blinked. "What?" I looked over at the flower arrangement near the vanity, the one tucked behind the hanging mirror. It was artificial, silk roses and eucalyptus, with a small pinhole camera nestled in the middle. I had a camera installed. The room went dead silent. "What?" Karen said again, voice suddenly smaller. "I didn't want to believe you'd actually do anything to hurt me," I said. "But after the bridal shower, after the robe, the comments, the looks, I couldn't take that chance." Karen's face paled. "Did you spy on me?" "I protected myself," I replied. "From you?" My mom gasped softly. Karen opened and closed her mouth like a fish yanked out of water. "I want to see it," she snapped. "If you're going to accuse me, I have a right to see." "Oh, you will," I said. Because I hadn't watched the footage yet either. But I didn't need to. I knew what I'd find. And I knew exactly when to show it. Karen looked around the room, as if someone might come to her defense. But no one moved. My bridesmaid Dana broke the silence. "Wow. You really played yourself, huh?" Karen's mouth twisted. "I didn't do anything. It was an accident. You all just love thinking the worst of me." "No," I said, stepping toward her, gown halfway zipped, hair still half curled. "We've all just finally stopped pretending the best of you." Karen's expression shattered. I turned back to the mirror and smiled as my new dress was fastened around me. Because the real show hadn't even started yet. By the time I stepped out of the bridal suite, fully dressed in my backup gown, you'd never know a disaster had happened. The satin clung perfectly. My hair had been touched up. Lipstick reapplied. I looked like a bride. A calm, radiant bride. But inside? I was vibrating. Because my sister had tried to destroy the most important day of my life. And she thought she got away with it. My father met me at the end of the hallway, eyes wide with emotion. "You look beautiful," he whispered, his voice catching. "Just like your mother on our wedding day." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thanks, Dad." He didn't know yet. About the dress. About the camera. About what I planned to do after the vows. Because I'd made a decision. Let her have her audience. Let her sit at the reception, smiling like the perfect sister. Let her toast me with fake warmth and hollow compliments. And then? Let her watch herself burn. The ceremony itself was everything I'd hoped for. Simple, heartfelt. Surrounded by people who truly loved us. My fiancé Josh looked at me like I was the only person in the world. He didn't know yet either, not the full extent of it, but he knew enough to sense something had gone down. As we stood at the altar and exchanged vows, I focused only on him. On the life we were about to build. Karen was seated in the front row, one leg crossed elegantly over the other, her face frozen in a neutral expression. Her blush dress stood out against the sea of navy and neutrals. My mother kept glancing nervously in her direction. But Karen? She didn't flinch. She didn't crack. She looked like someone who thought she'd dodged a bullet. And in a way, she had. Until the reception. The ballroom was buzzing. Dinner had been served, speeches were underway, and everyone was finally loosening up. Laughter floated through the room. Champagne flowed freely. I waited until the father-daughter dance ended to make my move. Josh squeezed my hand as the DJ faded out the music. "You ready?" he asked quietly. I nodded. The DJ tapped the mic. "All right, folks. The bride would like to say a few words." I walked to the stage. My heels clicked softly against the polished wood. The chandelier above glowed, casting delicate light on the crowd of friends and family smiling up at me. Karen sat near the front, sipping wine, a slight smirk tugging at her lips. I smiled back. Fake meets fake. "Hi everyone," I began, my voice steady. "I want to thank you all for being here on this day. It's been eventful." A few polite chuckles. I smiled again, but this time it was different. Sharper. Tessa stood at the side of the stage, holding a small remote. Weddings are complicated. So are families, I said, scanning the crowd slowly. But one thing I've learned is that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Karen shifted slightly. Some of you may not know, but the gown I wore today wasn't the original one I had planned. The original dress my grandmother's was destroyed this morning in what was claimed to be an accident. Gasps, murmurs. Karen stiffened. I kept going. What many don't know is that after a series of incidents leading up to the wedding, I felt the need to protect myself. So I had a small camera installed in the bridal suite. I heard the sharp inhale before I saw her move. Karen stood abruptly. You've got to be kidding me. I raised my hand. And since we're all here, and since this is a celebration of truth and love, I thought it would be a perfect time to share what really happened. Tessa hit play. The projector screen flickered to life behind me. The video was time-stamped at 8:57 a.m. The bridal suite. Empty. Except for Karen. She looked around. Moved toward the vanity. Picked up her Starbucks cup. Then she unscrewed the lid. Gasps rose from the crowd. She glanced toward the door. Took one last look at the dress. And tipped the cup forward slowly, letting the coffee drip in a thin line across the bodice. Then, when some of it didn't hit, she bent down and nudged it with her foot. The footage ended with her jumping back and throwing her hands up just as the door opened. Silence. Complete, stunned silence. Then a single, Jesus Christ, from somewhere in the back. Karen was frozen. People were turning to stare. My father stood up slowly, face pale. I didn't, Karen stammered. It wasn't like that. You ruined our grandmother's gown, I said, my voice sharp as glass. You ruined something sacred, not because of coffee, not because of clumsiness, but because you couldn't stand that this day wasn't about you. She's lying, Karen cried. That video doesn't prove anything. It proves everything, I said. And Karen realized in that moment that no one was on her side. Karen stood there like a statue, wine glass trembling in her hand, eyes darting from face to face as the room absorbed the truth. She tried to laugh, just a small, brittle sound, but no one joined her. Come on, she said, voice thin. You really think I'd do that? On my sister's wedding day? No one answered. My father stepped forward, slow and careful, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Karen, he said quietly. Please tell me that wasn't what it looked like. Karen's eyes shimmered. Her lower lip trembled, the performance barely holding. You think I'd sabotage her, she said louder now. That I'd destroy Mom's dress? That I'd do something so evil? My mom stood beside Dad now, face pale and unreadable. I want to believe you didn't, Karen's voice cracked. I was trying to help. I wanted to be part of the day. I thought if I got close to the dress, maybe Mia would finally let me. She faltered. Let you what? I asked, stepping closer. Let you back in? You don't earn your way back in by destroying something I loved. Karen blinked rapidly. You never loved me the way you love your friends. Or Josh. You always kept me at arm's length. That's because you always brought a knife with you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The crowd murmured again. Not loud. Just enough to feel like wind against a house of cards. Karen's house was swaying. I didn't think the camera would catch that much, she said suddenly. The sentence slipped out, soft and unfiltered. Her eyes widened too late. You could feel the collective snap of realization in the room. Oh my God. My cousin whispered. She looked around, panicked. That's not what I meant. I mean, this is being twisted. You don't know what it's like. You're all judging me, but none of you know how it feels to be invisible while she gets everything. You made yourself invisible, Tessa shot back, by burning every bridge you ever crossed. Karen's gaze landed on me again. For a moment she looked like the big sister I remembered from when I was 6. The one who once braided my hair and told me scary stories by flashlight. But that person had disappeared a long time ago. I just wanted one moment, she said softly. One moment where I mattered. You were my maid of honor until you started attacking me behind my back, I said. You mattered. But you chose to ruin that. She shook her head slowly. You think I'm the villain. But I'm the one who's always been second. Always the mistake. Always the backup plan. And now you've made yourself the footnote, I said, just as quiet. You didn't ruin my day. You just removed yourself from it. Josh stepped up behind me, his hand sliding into mine. "Let's go," he said gently. "You've said what needed to be said." But I wasn't done. I looked at the guests, people who had driven in from other states, who had taken time off, booked hotels, babysitters, all to be here for us. For this. "I know this isn't what any of you expected," I said. "But I believe in honesty. And today was never going to be perfect. But it is real. And that's what matters to me." I turned to the DJ. "Let's reset the music. There's still dancing to be done." Applause erupted. A bit tentative at first, but real. Karen stood off to the side, alone, clutching her wine like a life raft. My parents stayed. Frozen for a beat. Then, my father walked away without a word. My mother lingered. She turned to Karen, reached out like she might say something, but then pulled her hand back. And followed him. The next hour was a blur of music, hugs and people whispering versions of, "Good for you," or, "She needed to be exposed," or my personal favorite from Josh's aunt. "That girl should have been yeeted into a fountain." Karen didn't leave right away. She stood by the dessert table for a while, pretending to be too cool to care, but her eyes kept darting toward the dance floor where I was spinning, laughing, living. Eventually, she left without saying goodbye. She didn't even take a slice of cake. Later that night, as Josh and I collapsed into the suite, exhausted and slightly tipsy, he wrapped an arm around me and said, "You handled that like a queen." "She thought she was going to upstage me," I murmured. "You outshone her without even trying." I stared at the ceiling. "Do you think I went too far?" "No," he said without hesitation. "You gave her more grace than she deserved. You didn't humiliate her. You held her accountable. She'll hate me forever." "She already did," he replied. "Now she just has fewer people to hide it from." I rolled over, curled into him. "She ruined the dress," I whispered. "And she didn't break you." I didn't hear from Karen for 3 weeks, no apology, no explanation, just silence. And honestly, that was louder than anything she could have said. The video went semi-viral within our extended family. My cousin posted a vague TikTok about the wedding dress sabotage caught on camera that got over 300,000 views before she took it down under family pressure. People reached out from high school, old coworkers, even my college roommate, half in shock, half in admiration, and through it all, I kept waiting for the part where it hit me. Where I broke down crying. Where I grieved the sister I'd lost. But that grief. It had come long before the wedding. That day just made it official. What did come was a letter. Mailed. Handwritten. Sent to my new address under my married name, which meant she'd gone out of her way to find it. The envelope had no return address. The writing on the front was tight, sharp, and unmistakably hers. Josh found it first. "You sure you want to read it?" he asked, standing in the doorway of our new apartment, holding the envelope like it might bite. I took it slowly. "I want to know what she thinks she has left to say." I opened it at the kitchen table, the late afternoon sun casting stripes across the page. It started with, "Mia, I assume you hate me, that's fair." There was no greeting. No dear. Just my name like a bruise. She went on. "I've watched the video about 100 times. Everyone has. I've been called everything from a narcissist to a sociopath. Maybe I am. I don't know. I do know I hurt you. And I'm sorry." I paused there. Waited for the word, but. It came 3 lines later. "But you humiliated me. You didn't have to do it that way. You could have talked to me. Privately." I actually laughed. Out loud. Because that's what she never got. I had talked to her. For years. I'd tried the soft approach. The quiet forgiveness. The endless emotional labor of keeping the peace while she set fires. She just never listened unless she had an audience. The letter rambled. Some parts sounded sincere. Others, defensive and wounded. She said she was going to therapy. That she was looking at some of her patterns. She didn't ask for a relationship. Didn't ask to meet up. The last line simply read, "I hope someday you'll remember that I'm your sister." I stared at that sentence for a long time, because that was the thing. She was my sister. Not a stranger. Not a random toxic friend I could ghost and forget. We'd shared bunk beds and bath towels and Christmas mornings. We'd laughed over dumb TV shows and fought over borrowed clothes. She'd once punched a girl in 8th grade who called me weird. I'd lied to cover for her when she snuck out in high school. She was my sister. And she still chose to betray me. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and didn't respond. A few months later, I ran into my mom at a family gathering. It was my cousin Leah's baby shower. It was small, sweet. Nothing dramatic. Until I walked in. My mother blinked when she saw me. Her arms opened automatically, like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or apologize. "I didn't know you were coming," she said softly. "Leah invited me directly," I replied. A beat of silence. "I didn't know she had," she murmured. "I thought that I wouldn't show my face?" She looked down. "That maybe you needed space, from all of us." I sipped my lemonade. I needed space from Karen. The rest of you had a choice to make. Some made it quietly. She winced. "She's my daughter too." "And I'm your daughter," I said. "And she ruined my wedding dress, lied to your face, and tried to play victim when I refused to let her keep getting away with it." "I know." I set my drink down. "Do you?" Her eyes filled. "She hasn't been the same, after everything. She's lonely, and bitter. And she blames herself but also can't quite say it out loud." "She did say it," I said, nodding. "In a letter." Mom blinked in surprise. "She sent you one?" "Yeah. But it wasn't for me. It was for her. To feel like she did something. Like maybe the apology counts if you write it on paper and never back it up with action." My mother reached for my hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "For standing up. For refusing to let her rewrite the story again." I looked at her, tears suddenly threatening. "I didn't want to lose my sister," I said. "I know," she whispered. "I lost her too." We sat in silence for a while. Karen didn't come to the baby shower. No one asked why. My parents stole my car title and gave it to my golden brother. Then he wrecked it, and my parents want me to pay for his mistake. I was 22 when it happened, living at home during my final year of college to save money. I'd bought my car 2 years earlier, a used 2014 Honda Civic I'd worked for every weekend and late night to afford. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, paid for in full. No co-signers, no parental help. Every oil-stained hour I'd spent stocking shelves at the grocery store had gone into it. I still remember the day I bought it. My mom didn't even look up from her phone when I pulled into the driveway. My dad grunted something about how I'd better keep the maintenance up. No congratulations, no pride. But I didn't need that. The keys in my hand were enough. My brother Tyler is the exact opposite of me. 3 years older, zero ambition, and he's coasted on my parents' blind devotion for as long as I can remember. He's the charmer, slick smile, fast talker, always with some grand plan that somehow never quite works out. The golden child. My favorite. And he knows it. He's crashed 3 cars in the past 6 years. 2 were technically totals. 1 was actually my dad's, which he borrowed, while still drunk from the night before. That didn't stop them from bailing him out every single time. New tires, new registration, new lies. Me? I once scratched the bumper of my Civic pulling into the driveway too tight, and got lectured for 2 hours about responsibility and maturity. So when I walked out one Saturday morning to find my car missing, my stomach dropped. At first I thought maybe it was towed. I lived in a tight neighborhood where the parking rules were brutal. But I knew I hadn't broken any. Then I checked the driveway. Empty. My keys? Not in my backpack. Not in my room. Not in the kitchen drawer where I usually toss them. I was standing in the garage in my socks, scanning every inch of floor space like an idiot, when I heard laughter from the living room. Tyler. On the couch. Laughing at some TikTok. I walked in, trying to stay calm. "Where's my car?" He glanced up, smirking. "Relax. I needed to run some errands. I'll bring it back later." I didn't respond for a few seconds. I was staring at his hands, my keys twirling on his index finger like a toy. He didn't ask. He didn't even tell me beforehand. He just took them. Like I owed it to him. "How did you even get my keys?" I finally asked. He shrugged. "Mom gave them to me. Said you weren't using it this morning." That was the first punch in the gut. I turned, walked straight to the kitchen, and found her sipping her coffee like nothing had happened. "You gave him my keys?" She looked mildly annoyed. "He needed to pick something up, and your car was just sitting there." "It's my car," I said, more firmly than I meant to. "Paid for with my money. No one even asked me." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic. He'll bring it back." I stood there, stunned. Not angry yet, just numb. I don't know what I expected. Respect? A basic conversation? Later that afternoon he came back, reeking of weed. Fast food wrappers in the passenger seat. My gas tank? A quarter lower than it was. I didn't say anything. Just took my keys and left for a drive. I needed to be anywhere else. Windows down, music up. Hands tight on the wheel like it was the only thing in the world still mine. I started locking my door after that. Started sleeping with the keys under my pillow like a paranoid. I even got one of those metal lock boxes for the glove compartment. But it didn't stop. A week later, it happened again. This time I found out when I checked the driveway before work, and it was gone again. No text, no note. Just empty space where my car should have been. This time I called him. He didn't answer. Then I called my mom. He had an interview, she said. Why do you have to make everything about you? I was late for work that day, took the bus, missed a meeting, got chewed out by my boss. That night I had a serious talk with my parents. I told them clearly, this isn't okay. That's my property. I need it for school and work. It's not a shared vehicle. They just nodded, said they understood. Tyler said nothing. Just sat there, smirking. I should have known it wasn't over. 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the DMV. It was thin. One of those generic government envelopes you never really want to open. I almost tossed it, thinking it was a reminder about registration renewal. But when I opened it and read the first line, I froze. Your recent vehicle ownership transfer has been successfully processed. I sat down. My chest tightened. It took me a few seconds to even understand what I was looking at. There it was in black and white. My car, my VIN, and a new name listed as the registered owner. Tyler James K. My brother. I reread it twice. Then a third time. The DMV thought I'd transferred ownership of my car. To him. I didn't sign anything. I didn't go to the DMV. I didn't give anyone permission. The car title, the registration, all of it, was supposed to be in my name. And now somehow, it wasn't. I marched into the living room where my mom was folding laundry and just held the letter out. She barely looked up. Oh, she said, like I'd just shown her a receipt from the grocery store. Oh? I snapped. What do you mean, oh? She set the towel down and finally looked at me. We thought it would be better this way. You're always so possessive about the car and Tyler's trying to get back on his feet. We, not him, we. You forged my signature? She sighed. It wasn't forging, it was just helping you both out. You're under our roof, we can't have this kind of tension. It's exhausting. You still live here rent-free. All we're asking is that you share. I was shaking. You didn't just take the keys. You took everything. You gave him my car. Her voice turned sharper. Don't talk to me like that. We've given you so much. Tyler has had a rough time. He needs support. My dad came in halfway through the argument. He barely listened before he added, it's just a car. You're being selfish. No, I said, holding up the paper again. This is not just a car. This is theft. And then came the moment that broke me. Tyler walked in. He saw the letter in my hand and grinned like he'd just won the lottery. Guess it's official now, he said, spinning the keys around his finger again. Don't worry, I'll let you borrow it when I'm not using it. I didn't say a word. I just walked past him, up to my room and shut the door. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling wondering how the hell we got here. I'd tried to do everything right. Study, work, save, avoid drama, stay in my lane. And for what? So I could have my own parents undermine me behind my back? The next day, I went to the DMV in person. I brought every document I had, purchase receipt, insurance policy, even pictures of the car from when I first bought it. The clerk was sympathetic, but limited. It looks like a signature was submitted through our online portal, she explained. It matched the one we had on file. I blinked. I never submitted anything. You might want to file a police report if you believe the transfer was fraudulent. Fraudulent. There it was. The word I was afraid to use out loud. I thanked her, left, and sat in the parking lot for a long time. I stared out the windshield of my friend's borrowed car, clutching the steering wheel like I was holding onto the last bit of control I had. When I got back home, the Civic wasn't in the driveway. Neither was Tyler. It hit me all at once. I didn't even have a car anymore. That night, I packed. Not everything. Just the essentials. Clothes, laptop, documents, chargers. I messaged my friend Nolan, the one who let me crash on his couch during finals last year when I couldn't focus at home. "Can I stay a few days?" I typed. "Something happened with my family." He didn't ask questions, just sent back, "Yeah man. Come through." Before I left, I took photos of every document I could find. My old insurance card. The original bill of sale from when I bought the car from Mr. Hernandez down the street. I had no idea how far I'd have to go. But I knew I couldn't let it end like this. Right as I was about to leave, my mom blocked the doorway. "You're really going to walk away from your family over a car?" I looked her in the eye and said, "No. I'm walking away, because you made it clear I don't have one." I moved in with Nolan that same night. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment about 15 minutes from campus, and his roommate was out for the semester. The place wasn't fancy, but it was quiet. No yelling, no gaslighting, no golden child hovering in the background waiting to leech more out of me. The first night I slept there, I cried. Not because I was sad, at least not in the way I expected, but because of the silence. It was the first time in years that I didn't have to keep one headphone in, just to drown out the passive-aggressive tension from down the hall. The next morning, I filed a police report. I walked into the station with a manila folder full of documents. My original bill of sale, my ID, old maintenance records with my name on them, insurance correspondence, and even a few texts from Tyler casually mentioning taking the car for a spin, without my permission. The officer at the desk was sympathetic, but cautious. "I'll be honest," he said. "It'll be hard to prove intent unless you have evidence they forged your signature or accessed your account without consent. It's messy when it's family." I nodded. I expected this, but I needed to get it on the record anyway. "Even if nothing comes from it," I told him, "I'm not letting them rewrite the story later." He nodded and added the report to the system. I got a copy for my records. That weekend I posted the full story online. I didn't name names, yet. But I laid out everything. The car, the forgery, the betrayal, the letter from the DMV, the emotional manipulation. I uploaded a redacted version of the registration switch with Tyler's name blacked out and my own evidence alongside it. I left out just enough that it couldn't be traced by strangers, but anyone who knew us would immediately understand. It blew up. Thousands of comments, mostly support. A few trolls, of course, but that was expected. The most common response? "You need to lawyer up, fast." And they were right. So I did. I contacted a local legal aid office. I was a student with no real money, but they assigned me a sharp young attorney named Deirdre, who specialized in civil disputes and family mediation. She was blunt, efficient, cold in the way you need someone to be when your emotions are burning your throat from the inside out. "The signature on the transfer isn't yours. That's fake," she said after one look. "If we can subpoena the IP address it was submitted from, and match it to your family's network, we have grounds to press charges, or at minimum, demand reversal." For the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe. Then I got the call. It was Nolan who answered first. I was in the shower when he banged on the door. "Dude, it's your car. Tyler crashed it." I rushed out, soap still on my neck, and grabbed the phone. Tyler's voice was panicked, slurred. "It wasn't my fault, man. Someone cut me off. The brakes were weird. I think you didn't get them checked or something. I hung up. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew how this would go. The next day pictures started circulating. My Civic, totaled, hood crumpled like foil, airbags deployed. One of the front wheels bent at an angle that defied physics. He'd hit a concrete barrier on the bypass after apparently trying to merge while texting. I went silent for a few days. Not because I was defeated, but because I was processing. They hadn't just taken the car. They'd destroyed it. And now, Tyler was trying to claim I was responsible. That I'd neglected to maintain it, and he was just borrowing it for errands. My mom even posted on Facebook. "Sometimes we sacrifice for our family, and it's still not enough. My youngest son abandoned us, and now won't even take responsibility for the car he failed to keep safe. So proud of Tyler for surviving that crash. She made him sound like a hero. Like I was some deadbeat older brother who let his little sibling drive a death trap. That was the last straw. Deirdre moved quickly. She drafted a cease and desist, contacted the DMV for an official inquiry, and submitted documentation to begin reversing the fraudulent title transfer. At the same time, she initiated a civil complaint, enough to bring formal attention to the forged signature. But I did one more thing. I posted again. This time, I included everything. The Facebook post. A snippet from my mom's comment. Photos of the crash. The statement from my mechanic 2 months earlier, saying the car had just passed inspection. A blurred image of the police report. And one cold, clear caption. They stole my car. Totaled it. Then blamed me for the brakes. This was never about family. It was about control. The post hit harder than the first one. People weren't just sympathetic now. They were angry, furious. Especially young men my age. Guys who knew what it was like to be the overlooked one, the scapegoat, the responsible son, who got nothing but lectures while the golden child coasted. By the end of the week, I had 45,000 shares. The thread was cross-posted to Reddit. It was trending on Twitter. Even a few small creators made reaction videos about it. One title said, "His parents stole his car for his brother," then blamed him after the crash. I watched it alone in Nolan's living room. Part of me was still numb, but part of me finally felt like I'd taken something back. Not the car. That was gone. But the story? The truth? That was mine again. It had been 2 weeks since the second post went viral. My inbox was still flooded with messages. Some from strangers, others from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. A few offered places to stay. One guy even offered me his old beater truck, until I got back on my feet. And then came the unexpected one. A DM request. From Maya R. Her profile picture was familiar. Long dark hair, tired eyes. I recognized her instantly. Maya was Tyler's ex-girlfriend. The one he'd dated on and off for almost 3 years. The one who mysteriously moved to Denver right after their breakup last summer. Her message was short. I saw your post. I have something you should know. About your car, and your family. We arranged to meet the next day. A coffee shop 2 towns over. Public, safe, neutral ground. She looked older than I remembered. Not aged exactly, just worn. Like someone who'd lived more than she should have had to at 25. She didn't waste time. Tyler crashed a car once when we were together, she said, stirring her coffee. One of the ones your parents replaced for him. I was in the passenger seat. He was high. We hit a parked truck. I stayed silent. I could feel where this was going. He begged me not to tell your parents. Said they'd never forgive him. Made me lie and say it was a mechanical failure. I went along with it, until he blamed me for distracting him. She paused, looked at me. And they believed him. Your mom called me manipulative. Said I was ruining Tyler's life. I packed my bags the next day and never came back. I clenched my jaw. The familiarity of it all made my stomach churn. She went on. He's been doing this for years, and they always cover for him. Your car wasn't the first time he got something he didn't earn. And destroyed it. She slid an envelope across the table. Photos, screenshots, messages. A full paper trail of her time with Tyler. His drinking, his threats, his crashes. She'd documented everything. And she was giving it to me. Do whatever you want with it, she said. Just don't let him hurt anyone else. With Deirdre's help, we added Maya's documentation to the case file. The DMV ruled in our favor. The car title was officially reversed, posthumously in a way. It didn't matter that the Civic was now a mangled piece of metal in a junkyard. On record, it was mine again. It mattered more than I expected it would. My parents tried to push back. Claimed I was trying to destroy Tyler's future, out of jealousy. They sent emails, voicemails, even a typed letter from my dad. Signed like it was some sort of legal ultimatum. I didn't respond, but my lawyer did. And once they realized the tide had fully turned, the messages stopped. The final blow came from the insurance company. Because Tyler wasn't the legal owner at the time of the crash, thanks to the reversal, they denied his claim. And because my parents had orchestrated the fraudulent transfer, Their own insurance flagged the policy for investigation. I heard they had to pay out of pocket. Thousands. I won't lie, when I found out I laughed. Not out of pettiness. Out of relief. Out of sheer, exhausted vindication. They stole from me. Lied about me. Tried to paint me as the villain. And now the fallout was theirs to clean up. It's been 6 months now. I'm still staying at Nolan's, but I'll be moving into a studio apartment of my own next week. It's small. Kind of ugly. The walls are too thin and the ceiling fan makes a clicking noise when it spins. But it's mine. I picked the paint color. I chose the furniture. I signed the lease with my own name. And I got myself a new car. Nothing fancy. Just a modest little Corolla I found from a private seller. Paid for it in cash. It smells like freedom. I've cut contact with my parents and Tyler. Blocked them everywhere. My dad tried to reach out once more through a mutual cousin, some performative apology about how family gets messy sometimes. I deleted the message without reading the rest. They never apologized for stealing the car. Never owned up to the lie. They were only sorry the world saw it happen. I think about Tyler sometimes. I don't hate him. Not anymore. Hating him would mean I still want something from him. An apology, a changed man, a brother. But there's nothing there. Just a name I'm finally learning to say without flinching. As for my mom and dad, that's harder. It's not easy to admit your parents never really saw you. Just a support beam for the person they actually loved. But I've stopped trying to earn their approval. Stopped twisting myself into someone they might value. Now I focus on the people who see me as I am. No manipulation, no family tax, no one reaching for my wallet when I'm not looking. I used to think loyalty was about sacrifice. Now I know, it's about reciprocity. So yeah, they took my car. But I got something better in return. Clarity, distance, and peace. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. My sister had 2 weddings, an $80,000 honeymoon, and a PhD paid for. But when I asked for a dress, my parents called me ungrateful. My sister is my father's golden child, and no matter how hard I try to make him see me as her equal, it never works, and I think she takes advantage of that. Normally it's not a big deal, but this week, a few things happened that made it extra special. I'm hoping to marry next year, and she asked if she might invite her in-laws, who will visit the next time she comes over. I said all right because my parents were paying, but I know she's only doing it for attention. So she'll have at least 4 members of her political family there, and will undoubtedly parade them around. Also, my parents are planning a huge anniversary in November. But they are postponing the celebration since my sister, who lives overseas, does not want to travel so far until things are calmer. But last month, she went on vacation to a neighboring country. I was eating lunch with them and my fiancé when they told me they were postponing their major celebration until next year, and I couldn't take it anymore. I told my dad, "Of course you will postpone. We should all stop living until she is here." He stated it was inappropriate, and that I was making a huge deal over something unrelated to me. And my mother stated they would have something intimate, and that I was equally important, but I don't believe it. I stood up and told my father, "I'm sorry the love of your life isn't here, but the most important woman in your life should be your wife, not your daughter." I then departed. The next day I felt horrible, and tried to call my mother, who refused to speak to me and instead texted me that I was bitter, hateful, and needed assistance. But they, notably my father, damaged me with their desire to give her such a prominent position in their lives, after she had lived overseas for around 10 years. My father stopped me, and my fiancé is scared that they will no longer pay for the wedding. My sister, trying to be the center of the universe as usual, called me, but I did not answer. I waited a few days, but my parents have not called me. My sister stopped trying to contact me, but she did contact my fiancé to check on me. I went to see my grandfather today, and she told me that I needed to apologize since my parents love both of us. But we are different and have different things. So I started wondering if I was the problem. I just want those days where I am the most important person to my parents. And I continue to believe that my sister's golden child position should be addressed and fixed. But maybe I was wrong in how I conveyed it. Edit. I'm 26 years old. My fiancé is a lady. I also want to clarify that I don't believe my parents are awful people, just bad parents. Edit 2. This has been a long time coming. My sister, 33, and my father had a little club. She is intelligent, having begun reading at the age of 4. My father has taken her to see his clients in a nearby city since she was a child. And she would occasionally stay with one of his best friends who ran a bookstore. She has an extensive book collection, which my parents refused to discard, even when I begged them to send it to the woman, Dad's best friend, or my sister. They communicate practically every day, discussing economics, politics, and other topics. I'm not interested in any of those. And yes, Dad tried to take me with him, but I was always bored and spent my time going to my games or acquiring us stadium seats for our team. But I think he likes her more. My mother, on the other hand, experiences ups and downs with my sister since they are so different. The most recent issue was my sister's wedding 5 years ago. Yes, she owned 2. One is close with her home, and the other with our country. And my mother wanted her clothes created from a specific fabric, while my sister set a budget for how much the dress would cost, and even wanted to wear the same dress for both occasions. They argued, but she ended up with 2 outfits that were within her budget. She wouldn't even allow me to bring my girlfriend, now future wife, because she wanted it to be intimate. Yet there were around 50 people there. My mother informed my fiancé that she would be buying or creating her dress. My mother and fiancé have a great relationship, therefore I'm sure my sister helped convince her of that. My sister has a PhD that my parents paid for, but she never works in the family businesses. She just advises on occasion and says she doesn't want to be compensated. My parents supported her until she found work, and whenever she received her master's or PhD degree, we had to travel to Europe to be there. I work in a family business, so I know they will have to speak with me eventually, even if they are angry. I could give numerous examples of their fondness for her. I also don't detest her. I only wish she would let me shine on my days. And certainly the wedding would be a gift, but if they were willing to pay for 2 wedding gowns and a honeymoon, I deserve the same treatment. Edit 3. In case anyone is curious, you might be pleased. I received a message from my father instructing me to participate in a family Zoom call where I can say whatever I want, and everyone else takes turns. He threatened to withdraw his money from our firm if I did not attend. So I had to leave. But I promised him I'd ask my fiancé to join us. It was my fiancé, parents, sister, and her husband. When I connected, I noticed my sister was furious. I was the first to speak. I expressed my feelings to them and even mentioned, "Hey, you're treating my wedding differently," as well as what other people had said regarding my parents giving the businesses to my sister. I expressed how hurtful it was. They preferred her. They seemed to talk to her about serious issues, and she receives so much attention, and everyone thinks she's fantastic, etc. And no one said anything or interrupted me, which is extremely frequent in serious family conversations. They then asked if my fiancé had anything to say, and she bravely stated that she did not feel like she belonged in the family. She has always assumed that they see her as a daughter, and she remains by my side. Then it was my mother's turn, and she apologized for my feelings, said they tried to do things I enjoyed, and that they loved us both equally. She stated it was sad because I pretended everything was fine, and they didn't realize how serious it was. But she still believes I need assistance. She then told my fiancé that she loves her, but my sister is her only child. Then came my father's turn. He stated he's sorry I think he doesn't like me, but he's not sorry for loving his child. He stated that I did not mind the tickets, automobiles, or even living in a rent-free residence, and he is dissatisfied. He stated that when they die, everything they possess will be shared 50-50, and that if I do not want my sister to have any involvement in our firm, I can buy him out. He stated they will pay for my wedding regardless, because it is something they have always wanted to do for their children, but they are not pleased with me. He also encouraged my fiancé to be appreciative and not greedy. I was outraged by then over the lack of apologies and the attack on my fiancé, but I kept my cool. Then my brother-in-law informed me he had no idea how I felt about his family, and simply thought his nuclear family would attend, just as I had during his brother's wedding. He said, "No hard feelings about it." Then it was my sister. My sister does not swear or scream when she is actually angry. She is just extremely chilly, hard, and to the neck. She stated she could tell I was distancing myself about 10 or 11 when she came home from university, and I was excluded from several conversations with my father. She stated that she had agreed to be my guardian at the age of 18 if my parents died. Thus she needed to be kept up to date on all affairs, and did not want to worry me. She admitted she should have been a better sister, and was sorry I became so resentful, but her job path had nothing to do with me. She reminded me that I had been offered the opportunity to travel abroad, but declined. She reminded me that I had gone on vacation with her, and informed me that those vacations had been paid for by her or her husband, not by my parents, which surprised me. She said she asked me about her in-laws' visit since they needed to organize their trip around my wedding. She stated that my fiancé and I had just been dating for 7 months when she got married, and she did not want my parents to have to pay for her trip. She stated that she does not want to get paid for consulting because she believes it is wrong, but that the next time she will invoice me her true hourly rate because I am so offended by it. She stated that she traveled to the Netherlands from Germany because she was absolutely burned out, which, as terrible as it may sound, is equivalent to taking a 10-hour flight. She said that my grandmother was the one who told her everything I said since my parents sought to protect me, and that she was done with me for the time being until I started therapy. And she finished by saying that she loves me but does not like me right now. This is an obvious summation, but the way she said the things was something I'd seen her do to others but never to me. And I nearly sobbed. However, she had no softness in her eyes. My parents stated they could get me therapy, or I could find it on my own, and that if I don't do something to better myself, the wedding will be the last thing I got from them. What made me feel worse was the way my sister addressed me. She has never spoken to me like this, even when we were arguing. So I know she is serious. I had my ego delivered to me. Yes, I'm jealous. And yeah, I'm upset. My fiancé is crying, but I believe I need to consider my next move. We are also from Latam. Update 1. I couldn't sleep, and decided to read over all of the comments again. I tried calling my sister because, while I am jealous of her, the way she spoke to me pains me. She refused to speak with me, but I could communicate with my brother-in-law. He explained that she doesn't want to talk to me because I profoundly injured her, and she is emotionally drained by me, knowing that if we chat, she will say even more nasty things. This made me understand how much I adore my sister. And the problem is me. I still have negative thoughts and believe I have been slighted. I can't say I'm a completely new person, but my family has never spoken to me as they did. And my sister has always backed me, which I assumed was for the sake of appearances. I'm starting to think she might love me. I am quite perplexed. My brother-in-law is also an incredible man, and he advised me to get therapy and give it time. But I am not sure what to do or where to go. He told me to look into therapists and chose one, and he would assist me decide if I wanted his aid. He also said I shouldn't assume my family doesn't care. They aren't perfect, but they do their best. But he also asked me what my fiancé's family was bringing to the wedding, or our life. And I couldn't think of anything. She lives and works with me, and her parents do not pay anything since they believe my family is better off. I'm not sure where it will lead, but I did tell her I needed help because I had transformed into a monster. So no wedding till my family issues are resolved. She's crying, but says she understands. My grandmother stated that she notified my sister because my parents had just told her there was a fight. But this is not what I said. Looking back, what I said was terrible, and I feel bad about it. She said my family wouldn't respond that strongly, unless they really loved me. I asked my father if I could take some mental days off, which is not allowed in my country, and he agreed it sounded like a wonderful idea, reminding me that they love me and only want me to be happy, not just pretend. In addition, the volumes are stored in her walk-in closet in her parents' bedroom. They still have a lot of my belongings in my bedroom, and my parents have invited me to Sunday meetings whenever I'm ready to attend. I must also disclose that she performed 2 weddings when my parents inquired whether she would be willing to do so. My mother wanted to get her really fancy outfits, and in the end, they obtained 2 dresses for about €800 because my sister set a limit of €300 per dress. I guess I'm jealous of her because she's better than me. I don't want to feel this way, or damage my family anymore. So I suppose I can thank Reddit for the harsh comments. I have a lot of difficulties to go through, as well as a lot of jealousy towards my sister. I don't know where to begin. I'm beginning to worry whether I'm even ready to marry. But if the comments were all positive, I probably wouldn't have noticed it. Of course, my family call was quite difficult to be in. Update 2. It's been a fascinating moment for me and my family. I wanted to share because you, Redditors, are brutal, yet fair. Some people said I ramble, and I do, but I did my best this time. My family took a few days off work to process it all. My brother-in-law recommended a therapist, and I began seeing him right away. We've also had group and couple sessions, me and Dad, Mom, and my sister. It has helped me see all of the difficulties, and we are learning to communicate more effectively as a family, so that no one feels unwanted or undervalued again. I realize I have a long road ahead of me, but I want to get better. My parents say they only want the best for me and want me to feel loved. In addition, I am returning to my hometown. After high school, I moved out because I wanted to be like my sister, but I believe it is the greatest decision now. So when my parents gave me the option, I thought about it and accepted. Baby steps, but good ones. My sister did not speak to me for nearly 10 days. And while it may seem insignificant, this is the longest she has ever gone without communicating with me. It wounded me a lot, and I knew I had hurt her a lot. During our session, she gave me a list of the many messages people have sent about me. They were all favorable, complimenting my abilities and such. Her response was, "We are different but great in our own ways." She furthermore shared with me, "Most of the time, when something happens that my parents know I might give you crap about, they simply don't tell me so there's no drama." She laughed. "Maybe you're the true golden child since they shield you." She's talking to me again and has been very helpful. Am I still envious of her? Yes. But I want to turn that into admiration. My ex. While I understand that my feelings are my own, and that I am accountable for them, my ex did add fuel to the fire. She was always the first to point out what my sister had that I didn't, how much money everyone spent on stuff, and so on. Long story short, we split up. Long story short, I told her I was thinking of returning back home with my parents and pursuing a master's degree or something similar. She was not pleased and continued inquiring about the wedding, but I told her I couldn't think about marriage at the moment, and maybe we might both use a break. I also told her that I would give her 3 months to find a place to reside, or she could pay rent on the house, which my parents own. She was quite angry. They told me I had to marry her, or, if not, let her live rent-free and cover utilities and food because I was breaking up unexpectedly. I told her that was why I was giving her 3 months, and she could use her paycheck because she hadn't spent a dime while we were together. Then things became strange and terrible. She told me she was calling her family, wouldn't be leaving the house, and planned to sue me for mental distress. I went into a panic. She had stated the same thing when I tried to break up with her, but she eventually convinced me that she was the only one who loved me. But this time, when I called my family, they advised me to lock myself out of the house and contact a friend of my sister's. He walked in and told her she could sue. She could do whatever she wanted, she would not get anything, and that my 3-month offer was no longer valid, and he wanted her gone as soon as possible. He recorded a video of the situation and informed her that if anything was harmed, he would sue her. My sister had warned him that this was likely to happen, so he was prepared. He did it as a favor for her, as they were kindergarten buddies. A couple of my cousins stayed with me till she left several days later. Her father told me I'd go to hell. She is still employed by the corporation, and will continue to be so as long as she performs. But I no longer have any relationship with her, and have not visited the office. Yes, there is nepotism, and my family hires one another. However, no one would fire her because she does an adequate job and is always on time. I hope she finds love again, but not with me. I am alone at home and will most likely be unemployed next month, as my parents advise me to prioritize myself and my mental health. My brother-in-law has been a rock for me during everything. He actually cares about my entire family, and we are becoming true friends. My grandmother told me that no one loved my ex, and she is glad we are no longer together. She claims they all started disliking her when she became upset, because they didn't purchase her expensive gifts for our first Christmas. My buddies also told me that they did not like her. Turns out, everyone wanted it to end. Some joked about it throughout the years, but they believed she helped me and made me happy, so they coped with her. I hope I have greater luck with love. However, I also need to improve. I might accept the chance to start over abroad, but I am more optimistic. And certainly, my sister and I are attempting to find some common ground. She is absolutely fantastic. And the more I learn about her flaws and quirky habits, such as her lemon juice fixation, the more I appreciate her. Finally, speaking my truth provided me with the results I sought. And while I was a terrible asshole, I can now recognize how fortunate I am. Still not ideal, but a little less terrible. Update 3. Hello, my brutal yet fair buddies. I plan to send you my final update before, but a Redditor informed me of an extremely harsh post criticizing me, which drove me into a tailspin. I am fortunate to be feeling stronger, and would like to provide you with an update, primarily to close this chapter of my life. Also, because I've had so much support, kindness and love, it just feels appropriate to do. I'll also try to keep things straight. My ex. Since I left the company we haven't spoken much, but she grew furious when I informed her I wasn't coming back and we were going to sell it. My father made a deal with a buddy that every employee who wanted to may stay for at least 3 years, and keep their position without being demoted. I informed her, but she thought it was unjust, because people already treated her differently, and she believes people dislike her. I told her I hadn't said anything, but I know people weren't wild about her before, and it's no surprise that now that she isn't related to any boss, they're not putting up with her. We had a lengthy discussion about my future, and it was clear she was not with me for the proper reasons. My sister. I informed her of my posts, and she asked to read them. After some contemplation, I told her my username, and she said she wanted to look it up and we could talk about it later. She was outraged that people were being mean to me, but she was also grateful that people called me out, which I really needed. She stated her lemon juice thing wasn't that strange and teased me about it. In getting to know her better, I've also learned that they've lost 2 babies. But I wasn't told since I didn't appear engaged in their life, and she was concerned I'd react badly. That broke me. It made me understand my sister is a real person, not a myth. I have no idea what she has gone through. It made me very ashamed that I wasn't there for her because I was selfish and arrogant. Even in anguish, she considered how I would feel. Because sure, my sister loves me. She has told me that she loves me unreservedly. But now she's starting to like me again. My brother-in-law and his parents. My brother-in-law is an incredible dude. I genuinely hope to be like him one day. In my own version. I understand more and more why he deserves to be with my sister. He is filled with love and patience. We talked for a long time about having children, and I told him, please don't think I'm an obstacle. He was affected, because he told me they were thinking about not trying at all until I was well. But I know I would never forgive myself if I stopped them from having children. My parents informed me that now that I am making improvements in my life, they would like to spend seasons in Germany. The only reason they didn't before was that they wanted to be near me. It turns out they wanted to be close to me all along, but I was too ignorant to recognize. Me. I am moving to Germany. I decided to try something new. My sister and Bill are assisting me with all of the paperwork. I'm quite excited about traveling under an application permit. My parents are assisting me with document translation, legalization, and other related tasks. I'm applying for a master's degree and will be supported by my family, the sale of the firm, and a small position my brother-in-law has arranged for me. I am currently completing everything, and will be moving at the end of the year. My sister has her own apartment, and she will house me until I find my own. I'm already attending German classes, and my brother-in-law helps me practice. That is why I know my ex is not for me. When I informed her I was moving to Germany, her only question was if she could come, and if my parents would be willing to assist her out because she does not have a wedding right now. She has been writing about how my sister ruined her life with her schemes, but my sister's friend sent her a warning informing her that we will sue her. She stopped naming her, and now all of the posts are passive-aggressive and do not mention my sister by name. I apologized to my sister, but she merely wondered if I would ever reconcile with my ex. When I replied no, she said she didn't care what my ex did. I'm working extremely hard on my mental wellness. I know it will take months or years to reach a point where I am not jealous, but I also know it is for the best. I haven't started dating again, despite some friends' suggestions, since I want to be a worthy man. Plus I'm moving, so there's no sense. My therapist is fantastic, and the fact that we have our sessions online should not be an issue. Sometimes I reevaluate memories and understand that people liked, loved, and cared for me. But I couldn't see it. My sister is actually wonderful, and I couldn't recognize it since I didn't really know her. I was so concentrated on myself. I now realize that I am remarkable in my own right. Or so she tells me. And that I should stop comparing myself to her or anybody else. I never appreciated how much my parents cared about me or done for me. But now I know. My family loves me. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But I will not take them for granted. I'm looking forward to a brighter future, a stronger relationship with my family, and, if I'm lucky, a new nephew or niece. Thank you for everything you've told me, and for providing the motivation I needed to alter my life. I'm grateful I came across this website. Update 4. Hello to the few who inquired about an update. I recently reviewed all of my posts, and feel both ashamed and proud of them. I was ashamed because I was such an idiot. Proud of the progress made thus far. Things have altered slightly, but they are all positive for us. My parents. They now offer seasonal or short stays in Germany. We have taken up modest hobbies together, such as wine painting, and we are getting to know each other better. My parents may eventually relocate here, but nothing is certain at this time. The anniversary party is still postponed, but they went on a very luxurious trip as a second honeymoon, which they don't seem to care about anymore. My brother-in-law. He's my brother now. I also got acquainted with his brother, who introduced me to their football and pool teams. I soon acquired other acquaintances, but I continued to hang out with him a lot. My sister. She says she likes me again, which is truly the nicest feeling in the world. They're going to try again soon, and I'm really excited for them. Sometimes I tell her when I'm jealous, and she guides me step by step to figure out where it originated from. We've had disagreements, because we're human, but nothing major or lasting, and I believe she is more comfortable with me today. My ex. I don't keep up well with her. We were meant to be buddies, but she was so negative that I just blocked her everywhere. All I know is that she's dating someone else and telling everyone she's glad she didn't marry me, which is the same. I got into the program I wanted. I arrived toward the end of 2021 and stayed briefly with my sister and Bill. There was much disagreement about staying in the same city, but I ultimately opted to do so. I moved out and opted to try student life, but I still see my sister at least twice a week, and my parents when they visit. I'm still in therapy, learning how to improve, and I ride everywhere. I've had a few flings since I arrived, but I'm still not ready for a relationship. I want to find a companion, but it's scary, and I don't want to be misled. A year ago, I made a nasty comment. And now I feel like my life is only getting better. Thank you everyone. Update 5. I recently showed this to my girlfriend, and she was startled by what transpired. I am quite pleased and like my life right now. I'll be an uncle soon, I'm about finished with my new degree, and I have a wonderful relationship with my family. This is for the few people who asked for updates, and they will most likely be the only ones reading. No drama or bad news to report. So now, I am also enamored with lemon juice. Thank you Reddit, for busting my ass, and enhancing my life. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. My brother stole my apartment while I was away. My family backed him. I kicked him out anyway, now he's broke, divorced, and begging for help. Don't be selfish. Think about the child, my brother remarked as he took over my flat. You have money. You can rent another place, his wife said, tossing my belongings away. I did not argue, I simply smiled and left. The expressions on their faces when I replaced the locks 48 hours later were unforgettable. My grandmother used to tell me that family pledges were sacred, and blood always came first. But when I returned to New York City after a business trip and discovered my brother residing in my flat, I understood it was a lie. Oh, look who's back, Nathan, my older brother said, his grin way too easy for the occasion. He was sitting in my living room, his feet propped up on my coffee table, which was the same dark wooden table that my grandmother had purchased at a flea market in New Orleans, and that I had restored myself. It was now covered with crumbs and sticky cup rings. Jessica, his wife, was scrolling through her phone next to him, not seeming to be uncomfortable. Meanwhile, their youngster was playing on the floor with a toy car, but not just any toy car. My toy car. My grandfather gave me a little Chevy Camaro model when I was a child. A knot tightened in my stomach. I dropped my suitcase at the entryway, my gaze surveying the disaster. The rug I had brought home from Morocco was crumpled and stained with juice. I carefully hung a painting on the wall, but it was now crooked. Worst of all, my photographs had disappeared. "What are you doing here?" I inquired, my voice firmer than I felt inside. Jessica faked a small laugh. "Well, Nathan thought that since you were away, we could settle in. It's hard to find a decent place with a kid, and since this was Grandma's house." They referred to it as Grandma's house, as if the will did not exist, and my name did not appear on the documents. "Settle in," I said in surprise. "Come on, don't make a big deal out of it," Nathan remarked, rising up and looking agitated. "Grandma always wanted this house to stay in the family, and you're alone, while we have a child. Do you really need this much space?" Anger consumed me like fire. "Grandma left me this apartment in her will," I responded with tight teeth. "It's not for the family. It's mine." Nathan gave a big sigh and shook his head. "Don't be selfish, Lauren. Think about the kid. Unbelievable. They not only stole my house, but they also tried to make me feel bad about it." "How did you have the nerve to move in without even telling me?" I questioned, feeling the heat build on my face. "Don't exaggerate," he said, gazing at me condescendingly. "We're just here until we find something better." I gazed about with disdain and despair. They had not just moved in. They had modified things in an attempt to eliminate my presence. The lavender plant I kept in the kitchen had vanished, replaced by a jar of baby formula. The handmade beige and blue blanket that my grandma had knitted was vanished from the sofa. In its place there was an unattractive synthetic blanket, adorned with teddy bears. They were replacing me in my own house. Jessica stood up, crossing her arms, irritated. "If you were a generous person, we wouldn't be having this conversation." I laughed without humor. "If you were decent people, we wouldn't be having it either." My heart beat as I stared at them. They assumed they could walk all over me. They assumed I'd just say yes. I didn't have a plan yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The elevator reeked of dampness and cheap bleach, the distinct odor of early morning cleaning in ancient Manhattan buildings. But when I got to my apartment door, all I could smell was invasion. The door was slightly opened. The locks had been changed. Nathan and Jessica had not just moved in. They had taken complete possession. I pushed the door open and walked inside without asking permission. The mess remained, but now I saw it differently, as a declaration of war. My grandmother's old armchair, which always smelt like violet perfume, was now wrapped in a cheap gray blanket. The hand-embroidered cushions she'd made herself were gone. Have they thrown them away? My workstation, where I used to write at night with a glass of wine, was now cluttered with dirty baby garments. But the worst part was that my belongings were heaped in boxes in the hallway. "What on earth is this?" My voice was shrill and cold. Nathan went out of the kitchen, carrying a cup of coffee, as if this were his own home. "Oh, Lauren, you're back early." "Don't waste my time with nonsense, Nathan." "Why are my things in boxes?" Nathan shrugged and placed his coffee cup on the counter with a bang. "Jessica thought it would be better to reorganize the space a little. You know, so the kid could have his own room." "His own room?" I repeated, hardly believing what I was hearing. "Lauren, it's just a house." I gave out a sour laugh. "No, Nathan, it's my house." Jessica emerged in the hallway, looking unhappy and holding a dish of cereal. "Come on, Lauren, do you really need all this drama?" she exclaimed, putting a bowl of cereal into her lips. "You have money. I'm sure you can rent another place." I looked at her in bewilderment. "Excuse me, sweetheart," Nathan said, using the same contrite tone he used to convince Mom he hadn't stolen money from her purse. "We're just saying, you could share, it would really help us out." "Share?" I laughed, despite the fact that my tone was serious. "And how exactly do you share your home with me?" "Oh wait, you don't." Jessica sighed and placed her dish of cereal on the table. "You're so selfish, Lauren." "And you're a freeloader," I responded without hesitation. Nathan's face tightened. "There's no need to make this ugly." "Oh really?" I stepped nearer, seeing Jessica's instinctual movement slightly behind him. "You know what actually needs to happen? You two need to get out of my apartment." "Lauren," Nathan used his elder brother's voice, which had always worked on me as a kid. Mom and Dad also think it would be best if we use this place. There it was. The true reason for all of this. It was not simply Nathan and Jessica. Mom and Dad were also behind it. Rage burned throughout me. Mom with her insistence that family should always help each other. Dad with his passive participation. For years they had viewed me as the strong, independent one who was always forced to give in. Not this time. I crossed my arms and gave them a chilly smile. Interesting. I'd love to hear what a judge has to say. Jessica blinked with uncertainty. Nathan paled. What? I took out my phone and held it up for them to see. I have the inheritance papers. I have pictures of my things in boxes. Proof that you changed the locks and moved in without my permission. Do you really want to play this game and see what happens? Nathan clenched his jaw. You wouldn't take us to court. I wouldn't be so sure, I answered, sliding my finger across the screen as if I were already searching for a lawyer. Jessica hurriedly leaned in and whispered something into Nathan's ear. He seemed annoyed but said nothing. I stood there and waited. For the first time, I observed as control slipped from their grasp. They had no idea what to do because, for the first time, I wasn't portraying the understanding sister. I didn't have a flawless strategy yet, but one thing was certain. This wasn't going to go as they expected. Nathan raked his hand through his hair, frustrated. His gaze shifted between Jessica and myself, as if looking for an easy way out. Jessica, on the other hand, had no trouble continuing to play the victim. Lauren, you don't have to act like this. We're just trying to organize things as a family. I laughed directly in his face. Organize? No, sweetheart. Organizing means asking before barging into someone else's home. What you're doing is theft. Jessica made an angry grunt and crossed her arms. Oh my God, such drama. We're just trying to have a better life. At my expense. She shrugged, as if nothing unusual had happened. Nathan, who had been trying to maintain his usual conciliatory tone, shifted tactics. You know what? Mom and Dad are right about you. You think you're better than us just because you have money and can afford to live alone. There it was. The low blow. I felt my anger rising, but I kept it under control. Think I'm better? I laughed dryly. I don't need to think about it, Nathan. I am. I noticed his jaw clench, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. Growing up, Nathan was always the favorite. The son, the eldest. The person who was never blamed for anything. I was the person who had to share. The one who needed to assist. The person who always had to give in. But now I have what he lacked. Independence. Success. And he despised it. Look, Lauren, he said, his voice strained with tolerance. However, I cut him off quickly. Now, you're going to listen to me. I took out my phone again and browsed through my contacts. I'm calling the police. Nathan's eyes widened with shock. Jessica laughed incredulously. You wouldn't dare. I placed the call on speaker and pressed the dial. 1, 2. Wait, Nathan exclaimed, rushing forward to grab my arm. I gave him an icy smile. Yes, Lauren, please. There's no need to make this bigger than it is. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? What do you call breaking into someone's home, changing the locks, and kicking out the legal owner? Nathan gulped hard. He knew the answer. Look, just give me a couple of days. Jessica was furious as she turned to face him. A couple of days? Are you kidding me? Nathan ignored her and looked at me, pleadingly. We'll sort this out. We'll leave. I ended the call before it connected, and gave him a triumphant smile. You have 48 hours. Not a minute more. Without saying anything, I grabbed one of my boxes containing my belongings and walked toward the door. I turned to look over my shoulder just before walking out. Oh, and by the way, if a single one of my things goes missing, I'll press charges anyway. I left before they could say anything more. As I walked down the stairs, adrenaline surged through my veins. Nathan was cornered and knew it. But I was not stupid. I knew my brother would not give up easily. So the moment I stepped out of my own building, I did 3 things. I called a locksmith. I wasn't going to let them get away with it again. If Nathan didn't leave in 48 hours, I would be the one to change the locks. I called my lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer. Because unlike my family, I planned ahead. I called Mom. I was expecting her fake concerned tone from the moment she answered. Lauren, sweetheart. Why the fuss? Nathan said you had a hysterical meltdown. I closed my eyes and drew a deep breath. Mom, tell me the truth. How long have you known they've moved into my apartment? There was a pause, just long enough to confirm my suspicions. I don't see it that way. They have a child, Lauren. I smiled without humor. Uh-huh. So you did know. Do not exaggerate. And if they had taken over someone else's home, how would you excuse it? But it isn't anyone else, Lauren. It's your brother. Family helps family. The same old sentence. No, Mom. Family does not steal from family. Lauren. I hung up. I knew Nathan was going to try something. Maybe Mom will call to manipulate me. Maybe Jessica would play the victim. I didn't care. This time I was determined to make sure they departed for good. The next 2 days were hell. Constant calls and messages. Mom, Dad, Nathan, Jessica. Everyone is attempting to persuade me to change my viewpoint. Lauren, do you actually want your nephew to be homeless? My mother's voice was laden with guilt, as if I were a cruel monster. Sweetheart, just think this through. Dad, the ineffective peacemaker. Lauren, this is crazy. You're acting like a child, Nathan said, becoming increasingly desperate. Auntie, how can you be this cold? We simply wanted stability for our son. Jessica is the queen of emotional manipulation. I disregarded each one of them. While they wasted time attempting to guilt-trip me, I carried out my strategy. Update: the lock has changed. At 7 a.m. on the second day, the locksmith was already at my doorstep. So they changed the locks without your permission? The man grumbled as he studied it. Yes, I replied, crossing my arms. And now I want it back. Nathan and Jessica lost access to my residence in less than 30 minutes. No more invasions. No more excuses. Nathan tried to call me at noon. I ignored him. He arrived at the building about 5 p.m. He banged on the door like a lunatic. Lauren, open the door now. I sat comfortably on my couch, sipping my coffee, as he shouted from the doorway. After 10 minutes, he gave up. The message was plain. The following day, Mom decided to become involved. Sweetheart, we need to talk. We met in a coffee cafe near her home. She arrived with her normal martyr attitude, which she used to make me feel guilty. This has gone too far, she stated, placing her cup of tea on the table. Nathan is devastated. I rolled my eyes. He's heartbroken because he can't stay in my house for free anymore. Poor thing. Mom sighed, as if burdened by an impossible daughter. Look at Lauren. He is your brother. He's not my problem. Of course he is, she replied, frowning. Family should always help each other. I leaned forward and rested my elbows on the table. Tell me something, Mother. If I broke into Nathan's house without permission, changed the locks and kicked him out, would you defend me as well? Mom opened her mouth and said nothing. That's what I thought. Lauren, her voice became more tired. Why are you doing this? I grinned slowly. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not going to let people walk all over me. Mom remained mute. She realized she'd lost the war. She stood up, grabbed her coat, and looked at me sadly. I just hope one day you understand what it means to be family. I shrugged. I just hope one day you understand what it means to respect your daughter. She left without looking back. When I arrived at my flat that night, there was an envelope on the floor. It was from Nathan. Inside was a note, with his untidy handwriting strewn across the page. Congratulations. You won. But don't be surprised if one day you need anything and no one is around to help. I let out a laugh and ripped the paper in half. Nathan was gone. He'd lost. I closed the door and sank into the couch, smiling. This time, I was the one who established the rules. The silence in my flat felt unusual. It was no longer the emptiness of invasion, but the tranquility of victory. Nathan and Jessica were gone. Their final weak threat was discarded. But I was not naive. I knew it wasn't over yet. And I was correct. On Sunday morning, my phone rang. Mom. I didn't respond. 2 minutes later, another call. Dad. I sighed and disregarded it. The third call was from an unknown number. "Who is this?" I inquired as I took up. "Lauren, it's Dad." I rolled my eyes. Of course, now they were calling from a different number because they knew I wouldn't answer. "What do you want?" "Listen," his voice grew tired. "Your mom and I have been discussing. Can we meet?" "No." A tense hush. "Lauren, we can't keep going like this." "Oh really?" I answered, acting surprised. "Because I can. Nathan is in a really bad place." I laughed. "Yeah, sure. What's wrong? Can't live off of me anymore?" Dad exhaled. "It's not that I don't care. Don't call me again to ask for favors." I hung up before he could say another thing. That was the first time I'd ever hung up on my father, and it felt fantastic. The following weeks were unusually calm. There was no Nathan, Jessica, or the continual feeling that someone else was in control of my life. However, as expected, the peace did not last long. A month later, Jessica messaged me. "Lauren, I know you're angry, but Nathan has been really depressed. He's not himself. Can we talk?" I stared at the computer, contemplating whether to laugh or simply block her. Depressed? Of course he was depressed. His comfortable life at my expense had come to an end. Rather than responding, I accomplished something better. I blocked her phone number. The truth always prevails. The last I heard about Nathan was from a cousin at a family reunion months later. His attempt to find a better place had failed. Without my free flat, Michael and Jessica were forced to rent a small apartment in New Jersey, far from their dream lifestyle in Manhattan. And best of all, Jessica left him. She said she got tired of Nathan doing nothing, my cousin explained as she stirred her coffee. She took the kid and filed for divorce. I smiled and sipped my wine. Karma. Mom and Dad tried to make things better over time, but things never went back to normal. The barrier between us was more than simply physical. It was emotional. I was no longer the obedient daughter who answered yes to everything, and they had no idea how to deal with it. They eventually quit trying. I last saw Nathan by coincidence months later. I was walking past a coffee shop when I noticed him, phone in hand, and stared blankly. He saw me. I saw him. We didn't say anything. We just continued walking. Because he was no longer involved in my life. The morning sun crept through my window, illuminating every aspect of my home. Because yes, it was finally mine. There are no more toys spread around. No more rearranging furniture. No more invaders making decisions for me. I wandered into my living room with a cup of coffee, enjoying the silence. A different type of silence. Previously, it felt empty, like if something was missing. Now it felt like liberation. I sat on the couch and opened my laptop. I'd been thinking about something for days. A Reddit post. My story. I wrote it last night, but I didn't dare to upload it until now. My brother and his wife moved into my flat since they needed it more. When I kicked them out, my family portrayed me as the villain. My brother is now broke. His wife has abandoned him, and my parents are attempting to resume normalcy. They call me cold. They believe family is the most important thing, and I should be more understanding. But why am I always the one who needs to understand? Why is it never them? Should I forgive them, or cut them off forever? I read the question over and over. Did I truly want reconciliation? I looked at the screen, contemplating. Dad sent me a mail the other day. "Lauren, could we talk? Your mom is worried." Worried about what? Because Nathan was broke? Because Jessica left him? Because their child had to live in a modest apartment rather than mine? Not because they'd harmed me. Not because they felt guilty. But because of them, I was only useful for as long as I could provide them with something. I took a long breath before lowering my sight to the keyboard. My heart pounded. Whatever decision I made now would shape the rest of my life. I could ignore them indefinitely. I could offer them another chance. I could exact revenge. I bit my lip. The question was still present. The cursor continued blinking. I still wasn't sure what to do. So I squeezed my lips together and hit the post. Now all that remained was to wait. I slid down the couch, sipped some coffee, and opened the comments. What would you do in my position? I awoke to the sound of hundreds of notifications. My Reddit post had taken off. Thousands of people left comments, shared thoughts, and analyzed my narrative like if it were a television show. But what struck me the most were the remarks that were not in my favor. "I do not know, Lauren. I understand that your brother was wrong. But did he really need to wind up on the street with his child? After all, he is family. The flat belonged to your grandma, and you were both her grandchildren. It does not seem fair that just you received it. Didn't Nathan deserve something too? I'm not suggesting your brother was a saint, but changing the locks and throwing them out in 48 hours seemed excessive. In the end, everything backfired on you, right? Because your parents remain on Nathan's side. It seemed that no matter what you did, you would never win." That last comment impacted me harder than I thought, because they were correct. I closed my eyes and drew a long breath. My parents had always taken Nathan's side, since we were children. He was the oldest son. The one who made mom and dad beam with pride during family gatherings. The one who received support when he failed. The person who never had to show himself worthy of affection. In contrast, I needed to work for it. If I received decent grades, it was the least expected of me. If I had troubles, it was because I was oversensitive. If I needed something, there was always something more essential to deal with. But with my paternal grandma, things were different. She was the one person who made me feel like I belonged. Perhaps she knew what it was like to be left out. My mother never liked her. They never got along. I suppose in her mind, I was her mother-in-law's granddaughter, not her daughter. So my grandmother was there for me when my parents weren't. She taught me how to cook and care for plants. She told me stories about her childhood in New Orleans as we sipped hot chocolate in the cold. That's why she abandoned me at her flat. It wasn't favoritism, it was love. However, when my parents read the inheritance, it appeared to be an injustice. They said it wasn't fair. Grandma didn't consider Nathan's future. "Lauren, you don't need so much space. Don't be too stubborn. He's still your brother." As I read the comments on Reddit, everything came back to me, and I realized something I had never wanted to accept. Yes, I was upset with how they had treated me. Yes, I was tired of being the one who constantly had to compromise. But what matters the most? Yes, I envied Nathan. When I saw it in a remark, I nearly dropped my phone. "Lauren, I know your brother mistreated you. But have you ever considered that your fury isn't limited to this situation? It appears that you've spent your entire life hoping that your parents will notice you, and, for once, choose you. However, they never did. Perhaps this accounts for some of your hostility." Ugh. Seriously? Yes. That was it. I had always hoped that at least once my parents would protect me. That they would say, "Lauren is correct. This belongs to her." That they would not instantly support Nathan. However, they never did. I'd spent years pretending it didn't hurt. I convinced myself that I didn't need their approval. But if I honestly didn't care, why did it ache so badly? I massaged my face with both hands. I had no answers. Should I speak with my parents about this? Will it even be worthwhile? Or more significantly, did I want to be in a relationship with them anymore? The question persisted in my head while I glanced at the screen. My post received numerous comments. But this time, I was unsure if I wanted to continue reading. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Sister mocked me for years while parents watched. Then they skipped my wedding to protect her ego. I stayed silent, and it cost them everything. I, a 28-year-old female, married 8 months ago after being in a relationship for 4 years. Everyone attended the wedding except my parents and my sister, 26F. I was not shocked that my sister did not attend, because she and I had never gotten along well. I issued an offer to her out of politeness and common civility, but my parents' absence was unexpected. It's no secret that my parents have always preferred my sister to me. She has always been better at almost everything. She is obviously more conventionally attractive than me because I am small and overweight, and she is supermodel material. I am not even exaggerating. If I'm not mistaken, she dabbled in modeling while in college and was part of certain assignments, but she became too preoccupied with her studies and quit. She has a business degree, and shortly after graduating from college, she accepted a job offer from a large corporation, and began rapidly climbing the corporate ladder. She's young, attractive, and accomplished, and my parents have always been prouder of her than of me. To be honest, I do not blame them for this. She is the girl they can truly brag about. In comparison, I am quite ordinary. I don't refute it because I lack both attractiveness and intelligence. I'm not disparaging myself, I'm simply being practical because, while I'm not as accomplished as she is, I'm still content with my life. It used to sting that my parents weren't as proud of me as they were of her, and they didn't make any attempt to show me the same love and affection. With time, I simply accepted it. It wasn't like I had a choice. I had tried everything I could to get my parents to treat me the same way since I was a child. But nothing seemed to work. It seemed as if they were infatuated with my sister, and I would never be good enough. So why bother attempting to impress individuals who will never recognize your positive qualities, and will only compare you to your sister? After a while, I just quit trying. I started living my own life, and I must admit that it made my life a lot happier. I still kept in touch with my parents though, because I didn't want to cause any problems. I knew they were very concerned with keeping up appearances, so if I abruptly stopped talking to them and cut them out of my life, they would make a big deal out of it, and I didn't think the drama would be worth it. So I opted to be there on the surface, but I was actually rather far from them, and they didn't seem to mind since they had my sister to obsess over. That was how it had been for the past few years, until last year, when I got engaged to my longtime partner. Of course, I informed my folks about it. I invited them, but they did not turn up. It wasn't like I missed them much during the wedding, but it was still a bit of a surprise because they didn't have a large crowd. People asked about my parents. Nobody was surprised that my sister did not show up because they knew we had a strained relationship. However, my parents' absence was significant, especially because there was no explanation provided. So, a few days after the wedding, I decided to approach them about it. Even before the wedding, when I realized they had not RSVP'd, I attempted to contact them but received no response. Back then, I suspected something was odd, but I wasn't too concerned because I already had a lot on my plate. However, after the wedding, I desperately needed answers. I am determined to confront my parents once and for all. When I phoned them after everything was done, they finally answered. Even though I had assumed they would simply ignore me in the weeks leading up to the wedding. As soon as they answered the phone, they told me that they were extremely disappointed that they would be unable to attend, and that I should have sent them a formal invitation. I was visibly perplexed, because I was certain that I had invited them. My husband and I had carefully reviewed the guest list several times, to ensure that no one had been left out. We sent out both physical and electronic invitations, and I knew my parents had received one. So, when they indicated they were furious that I hadn't even bothered to send them an invitation during the phone call, I realized something was wrong. While they were telling me how insulted they felt since they hadn't received an invitation, I decided to go check to see if I had sent it. And sure enough, I had. So I knew they were trying to gaslight me, but I didn't say anything. I simply apologized for my mistake and hung up. I was obviously annoyed that they were attempting to make me believe that this was my fault in some way, despite the fact that they had chosen to skip my wedding on purpose for reasons I had no idea about. After that phone call, I informed my husband what had transpired and how my parents had attempted to gaslight me, and he said he was very confident they were just furious that I was marrying before my sister. So that's why they opted to skip the wedding, and now they're trying to dupe me into thinking I had somehow forgotten to invite them, so they can have an explanation without having to admit their mistake. My husband made me realize that they were only concerned because I was marrying before my sister. At first, I didn't comprehend what he was saying, but then he brought up other examples. First, when I called my parents to tell them I was engaged, they were not pleased at all. They appeared astonished, but I imagined they were surprised that I was calling to inform them at all. Because we had a rather frosty relationship, I only called them before posting about it on social media, because I felt it was my obligation as a daughter, and it would be more polite to do it. So I assumed that was what they were surprised about, that I was informing them. But my husband informed me that he could tell they weren't thrilled, because the look on their faces wasn't one of surprise. He didn't mention it to me at the time since he didn't want to make a big deal out of it or stress me up. But even during the engagement party he noticed that my parents were sitting in a corner pouting, rather than chatting with everyone. And when he went to speak with them just to be courteous, he discovered that they were on the phone with my sister, and he could hear her crying on the other end while they tried to console her. It didn't take a genius to figure out why they weren't too pleased with my entire engagement scenario. And even though he couldn't hear what my sister was saying on the other line, he could make an educated guess. When my parents realized he was approaching, they set down their phones and began acting silly with him. But it was too late. I was startled to learn these facts, but they helped me explain a number of other things. The only reason he hadn't told me anything was that he didn't want to make me nervous about the wedding, which I was already stressed about preparing. It wasn't until after the wedding that I learned about it, and I'm very sure that was the real reason they didn't attend. It couldn't have been conceivable that they didn't receive the invitation, especially because I double-checked everything. So after they didn't show up for my wedding, I determined I wasn't going to speak to them anymore, not even for the sake of appearance. I'd had enough, and if my sister was their sole priority, they could stay with it. A couple of weeks ago, I learned from some of my family that my sister is engaged. Apparently, she's been with this guy for a year, and when he proposed, she accepted. Good for her. And I know my parents are overspending on this wedding since they have been talking about it online. They've already spoken with a few of their pals and started looking into large venues, which will be quite expensive. My sister has been informing our relatives that she will be shopping at Vera Wang, and I know it will be a big deal. I didn't give it much thought, but a couple of days ago, my parents contacted me and informed me that it was extremely inappropriate for me to try to disrupt my sister's wedding. I had no idea what they were talking about, so I assured them I hadn't mentioned anything. Neither did I care because we hadn't spoken in a long time, and I wasn't interested in fighting with them right now. But they told me that they knew I had spent the previous 8 months after my wedding talking trash about my family, and they were very disappointed in me. They informed me that all of the relatives they had communicated with so far had expressed no interest in attending the engagement party, and had already begun to make reasons for not attending the wedding. They knew I was involved since my sister was evidently furious that our family would not attend her engagement celebration. She had decided to vent to a cousin of ours, and she had been told that apparently, I had been telling everyone in the family that my parents had not shown up at the wedding because they were upset that my sister was not marrying before me, as they would have preferred, because they think she is prettier and more successful. They accused me of painting them in a negative light, and as a result of my claims our family was unwilling to attend the engagement party, let alone the wedding. And there, they had a point, because after the wedding, if my relatives asked me why my parents hadn't shown there, I would simply tell them what I thought. I was really outraged at my parents' actions, and after hearing what my husband had said, I didn't think I needed to hold back. Anyway, whenever I ran into a relative or was attending a family gathering, and they asked whether I finally had an answer as to why my parents were not present at my wedding, I would just tell them the truth. I didn't think I was gossiping about them, or doing anything improper because, in my judgment, they couldn't be bothered to keep up appearances during my wedding, despite the fact that they had always been quite concerned about doing so. Because they prioritized protecting my sister's feelings above all else. So, I'd learnt my lesson. I wasn't going to put in any effort, and after my husband told me, I decided that being honest was the way to go. I didn't truly consider the repercussions at the moment. I thought people deserved to know why they weren't at the wedding. I told them what my husband told me. I also told them about my talk with my parents, which I described as informal. I didn't try to sound sympathetic, but I also didn't mince things. What I didn't understand was that word spread, and by now, almost everyone in the family knows that my parents first skipped my wedding because they didn't want my sister to feel terrible about their attending, and also because she was more important to them. On top of that, they attempted to deceive me into believing that I had somehow missed inviting them. Even though they didn't say anything to me directly, my family has decided not to attend my sister's wedding. They do not want anything to do with my parents. And the cousin who told my sister about all of this had overheard her discussing it for quite some time. This girl is a gossip, so I'm not surprised she opted to share that information with my sister and parents. I'm quite sure she just wants to see the drama unfold. And she's in luck since my folks are quite unhappy. They believe that I sabotaged them on purpose. They believe that I am the one who is jealous of my sister, which is why I intentionally spread these rumors and made them appear like the bad ones. They said my husband made up the entire affair. Nothing of the sort had occurred. They even accused me of not inviting them on purpose so that I could use the excuse to seek compassion from relatives and portray them as villains. I do not agree with any of that. I'm very sure my spouse was speaking the truth, and I know I sent those invitations to them. What I do find strange is that, because of what I told my relatives, they have decided not to attend my sister's wedding. So, AITA for informing my entire family about the real reason my parents did not attend my wedding. Edit. There are various reasons why I don't get along with my sister and never have. The main one is that she's constantly trying to bring me down. It's not enough for her that our parents already prefer her over me. She wants me to be aware of this at all times. I have no idea what her problem is, but she has always attempted to rub it in my face since we were children. It's not like I didn't realize she was a lot more successful than me when we were kids. She was constantly at the top of her class, excelled in sports and other activities, and was also quite popular. That should have been sufficient for her. But for some reason, she made it a point to make me feel horrible about it by making nasty remarks, comments and the like. She had a group of friends who, despite the fact that I was their senior, tried to bully me every day. The only reason I never made a big issue about it was that I didn't believe they were important enough for me to address. At worst, they were a small inconvenience to me. I found them annoying, but I didn't really care about them. As for my sister, I had hoped that she would eventually grow out of this dumb little habit. But she didn't. She continued to behave in the same manner, making jokes about me, making digs at me, and so on, far into her adulthood. To the point that I simply stopped showing up at places because of her. I do not want to make any drama. I'm typically a non-confrontational person who dislikes interacting with folks I don't like. I basically try to avoid them altogether. So, over the past few years, I've only attended family occasions when absolutely required. However, when it comes to minor issues, I tend to avoid them simply because I do not want to see my sister. So that's why I don't get along with her. And I don't regret it. I tried so hard to get along with her when we were youngsters. However, you eventually realize that this is not the type of person you want in your life. That's the kind of revelation I had with my sister a few years ago. Then again with my parents recently. The only reason I'd held on to these ties for so long, despite the agony they'd given me so far, was that they were all I had as family. I mean, I had my relatives, but it wasn't the same. However, I now believe that my relatives are probably more like my family than these people ever were. Update 1. Hey, after reading the comments here, I decided to ignore my parents, since I realized that exposing the truth to the rest of my family was not as horrible as they made it out to be. I simply stated my point of view. I do not need to apologize for it. So, when they started messaging me constantly, I decided to respond and say the same thing to them. Then they started arguing with me, telling me that I had done everything on purpose. That I wanted to damage their image for the rest of the family just because I had always been envious of my sister. We were talking over the phone, and before I picked up, I had already determined that this time, I was going to let it all out. Because I needed to vent. As soon as they accused me of being envious of my sister, I simply agreed. I told them that yes, I was jealous of her, but not for the reasons they imagined. I wasn't envious of her because she was more accomplished or more conventionally gorgeous. I had always been envious of her since, rather than being neutral, the two of them had always preferred her to me. I could understand the rest of the world selecting her over me for the reasons I indicated. But what about my own parents? That really hurt. And I was tired of pretending I didn't care. Because things like this reach people. And the idea that this shouldn't bother me, that I should just brush it aside and act that everything is fine, is also extremely unrealistic. But I did it because I anticipated my parents to eventually appreciate me for who I am. But that never occurred. Even when I wasn't trying, I was unconsciously attempting to make them appreciate me. That's why I'd stayed quiet about their horrific treatment of me for so many years. However, when I eventually spoke up, they objected because it made them seem bad. Okay, rough. Because if they truly believe that the truth makes them appear terrible, they may be the source of the problem, not me. If they wanted to appear as excellent parents, perhaps they should have just been decent parents. And I'd only have positive things to say about them. But they had given me this ammunition themselves. So they have no reason to complain about me, making them seem terrible. If I wanted to tell my relatives how my parents treated me, how they always preferred my sister over me, and make a big issue about it, I would do so. They had already accused me of playing the victim to gain sympathy. So, maybe I was doing just that. Instead of calling me repeatedly to persuade me to go back on my word, Perhaps they should try talking to my relatives and convincing them that they are not the individuals I made them out to be. Perhaps it would be a more effective use of their time. But talking to me would get them nowhere, because I'd already said everything I needed to say. And if my relatives trust me, that's great. The basic line was that I wasn't going to make things better for them. I am not responsible for anyone else's reputation other than myself. My parents simply went silent, most likely because they were unfamiliar with my behavior. They had not expected an explosion like this from me, because I had previously stated that I am a non-confrontational person who is also quiet and introverted. They undoubtedly assumed I was going to let this go as well, but I was tired of having them walk all over me in the hopes that they would eventually appreciate me. But after a few seconds, my parents told me that because I had already determined that they were bad parents, and I had such strong feelings about their inability to raise me in the same way that they had raised my sister, they had decided that it might be time to let go. So far, they had expected me to resolve the matter because they felt I was family. They assumed I was their daughter, so I'd be concerned. But obviously I was glad they were hurting. So they assured me they had no expectations of me, and that I could live my life whatever I chose. They would never trouble me again. They concluded their little address by reminding me that, at the end of the day, we were both their daughters. Perhaps I just felt like they had always chosen my sister over me because I was the insecure one. But it wasn't their fault, and I shouldn't blame them. So, in the end, they couldn't admit that some of this was their fault. They expected me to be the evil guy. It took a lot of work for me to keep my mouth shut, but I eventually didn't say anything since I knew disputing with them would be fruitless, and I didn't want to end up talking in circles. So if they wanted to make me the villain, that was great with me. At the very least, it would get them off of my back. But now that I've made my point and told them how I've felt throughout the years, I feel a lot lighter and healthier. Whatever happens with my sister's wedding, they can handle it. I honestly don't care. That's their problem to solve. I am simply going to do my thing. Update 2. Hey. I had that talk with my parents a few days ago, and today my sister contacted me and texted me that anything I said to my parents was completely wrong, and they were quite furious about it. After all, they reared me. They had done everything for me as parents, and now I couldn't simply turn around and tell them that they hadn't done enough, because that would be extremely ungrateful of me. She was playing all holier than thou, and I knew she was just enjoying the opportunity to lord it over me, pretending to be the epitome of elegance and dignity when she was far from it. It greatly irritated me, so I didn't respond to the text. I just blocked her. I believed that would be enough. But then a few hours later, my husband called to tell me he had received a text from an unknown number. And sure enough, it was my sister texting him. She had basically told him the same thing, and then told him that he needed to get me to apologize to our parents since what I was doing was extremely wrong. And now that he's a member of the family, he can't just sit back and watch things like this happen. Especially when it makes me look like a complete fool. I was outraged that she had the arrogance to text my husband. But my husband found it quite amusing. He thought it was hilarious that my family thought emailing him and asking him to make me apologize would work. And because of him, I was able to laugh about it and brush it off. Otherwise, I might have gone overboard. I haven't told anyone about what's been going on with my parents in the last few days because I haven't had time to chat with most people due to my job schedule. But then, if someone asks me or I run into somebody, I'm going to be really upfront with them, because I'm sure that's what my parents will be most furious about. I'm not typically like gossip, but if it's making my folks upset, I'm all for it. And the greatest part? It's not even gossip. I'm just telling them my side of the story. I don't even need to make anything up. I just have to tell them how they really behave, and it's terrible enough that people despise them. The funniest part of all of this is that, despite the fact that they already know I'm not going to hold back any longer, nor will I protect the family's reputation by being silent, they're still going out of their way to make things worse for themselves by pulling these antics. Update 3. Hello. So it's been a couple of weeks since my last update, and my parents have begun to inform everyone in the family that I've been spreading false rumors about them in order to make them look bad. All because I was jealous of my sister, and couldn't bear the thought of people attending her wedding, which was going to be much grander and more extravagant than mine. I was quite sure they thought this technique would work, making me look like the evil guy and all. However, the majority of our family members had already decided to support me. And, to be honest, I don't need to try. They suspected my parents of overindulging my sister when we were children. So my account of events was far more credible to them than whatever my parents were trying to persuade them to believe. Instead of simply taking their word for it, they informed me what my parents were saying about me behind my back. In fact, their entire scheme flopped. Because now people are laughing at them and their idiocy alongside me. This is the epitome of karma, and I'm so delighted they chose to expose everyone to their true colors. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. My parents funded my brother's failed startups with my inheritance, then tried to steal my house when his wife threw them out. I still remember the look on my father's face when I told him I was going to major in English literature. He didn't even try to hide the disgust. Just leaned back in his recliner, shook his head and muttered, "So you're throwing your life away on fairy tales?" My mother said nothing at first. She was too busy folding laundry, but I caught her little sigh. The kind she gave when she'd resigned herself to disappointment. She didn't need to say anything. She never did. My parents were a unit, and they made sure I knew exactly where I stood. Low expectations were their love language. Growing up, I wasn't the golden child. That title belonged to my brother, Adam. Tall, athletic, born with that natural charm that made adults laugh and nod whenever he opened his mouth. He could do no wrong, even when he totaled our family car at 17, or failed 3 college classes in 1 semester. Boys will be boys, my mom had said. He just needs time to figure things out. Me? I got straight A's. I worked part-time jobs through high school. I paid for my own AP exam fees because my dad called them a waste of time. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I kept succeeding quietly, they'd eventually notice. That they'd finally say, "We're proud of you." But all I ever got was, "Don't expect us to bail you out when that liberal arts degree leaves you broke." So I stopped expecting anything. I moved out the day after graduation, suitcase in one hand and rejection in the other. No party, no cake. Just a polite, "take care" from my dad, and a reminder from my mom to not forget to leave my house key on the table. College was hard, not the classes, but the isolation. Everyone else seemed to have someone cheering them on. Parents visiting for the weekend, care packages, money wired at the last minute. I scraped by on scholarships, ramen noodles, and grit. When the dorms closed over Christmas break, I crashed on a friend's couch because I couldn't go home. Not really. After I graduated, I landed an editing job at a publishing house. It wasn't glamorous, long hours, low pay, but it was mine. I kept working, moved up, took on freelance projects at night. While my brother hopped from startup to startup, leaning on our parents every time rent was due, I saved every dollar I could. And after 10 years of grinding, I bought my first house. Not a mansion, not some HGTV dream, but a solid 2-bedroom with creaky floors, a small garden, and sunlight that poured into the kitchen just right in the morning. It was mine. Paid for. No help. No co-signers. Just me. For the first time in my life I felt like I could breathe. That was 6 months ago. And then last Sunday they showed up. I had just come back from the farmer's market, juggling oranges and a bag of fresh bread, when I saw their car in the driveway. My father was leaning against the hood, arms crossed like this was some kind of intervention. My mother stood beside him, clutching her purse like a shield. "Surprised to see us?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just unlocked the door and walked inside. They followed, uninvited. They looked around like they were touring a museum, commenting on the hardwood floors, the backsplash in the kitchen, the natural light. My mom smiled tightly. "You've done well for yourself." I said nothing. Then my dad cleared his throat. "We were hoping we could stay for a while, just a few weeks. Adam's place is being fumigated and we need somewhere to go." And that's when it hit me. They didn't come to congratulate me. They didn't come to reconnect. They came because they needed something. Again. I stood there for a long second, bread still in one hand, trying to process what my father had just said. A few weeks? They hadn't spoken to me in over 2 years. Not since Adam's wedding, the one I wasn't invited to until 3 days before, when someone must have realized a family wedding looked weird without the full set of siblings. I sent my regrets and stayed home. No one followed up. And now they were standing in my hallway, eyes darting between the new rug and the living room wall like they were already imagining where they'd hang their things. I set the groceries down on the counter. "Why aren't you staying with Adam?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Adam's wife, Sophie, was polite in the way a shark might be, smiles full of teeth. I'd met her once. That was enough. My mother looked away. "There was a misunderstanding." My father snorted. "We're not welcome there right now." Interesting. For years, I'd watched them bend over backward to accommodate Adam, pay his rent, buy him a car, look after his dog when he went on last-minute business trips. I didn't think anything could make them unwelcome. "Just a few weeks," my dad repeated, like saying it again would soften it. "No." My voice came out calm, steady, colder than I expected. They both blinked. "What do you mean no?" my mom asked, laughing awkwardly like I'd made a joke she didn't get. "I mean," I said slowly, "you can't stay here." "But we're family," my father said, the words coming out hard and sharp like a challenge. "You'd really turn your back on us?" I looked him in the eye. "You did it first." My mother's mouth opened and closed. "That's not fair. We always did what we thought was best." "No," I said. "You did what was best for Adam." And for the first time in a long time, I let it out. All the birthdays missed. The late-night calls were ignored. The awards, the promotions, the milestones, all downplayed or dismissed while Adam was praised for buying a used car or applying to some online business course. The inheritance from my grandparents, split with surgical precision to exclude me completely, with the excuse that I was doing just fine. "You made it clear," I said. Over and over. "I wasn't the one you bet on. I wasn't the one you supported. You didn't believe in me. And now that Adam can't, or won't, help you, you're here, asking me to clean up his mess." My mom's eyes filled with tears. She looked genuinely hurt. But I didn't feel sorry. I felt tired. Tired of pretending their behavior hadn't shaped my entire life. "You're holding a grudge," my father muttered, his voice suddenly bitter. "That's what this is. You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." Silence. "I'm not 13 anymore," I continued. "You don't get to walk in and act like none of it happened. This house, my life, I built all of it without you. And I won't let you take up space in it now just because it's convenient." My father stepped forward. "You think you're better than us now?" I didn't flinch. "I think I finally know what I'm worth." That landed like a slap. They stood in stunned silence for a few seconds, as if waiting for me to crack, to backpedal, to offer a guest room out of guilt. But I didn't. I walked to the front door and opened it. "You should go." My mother walked past me without a word. My father hesitated, jaw clenched. Then he joined her. They didn't say goodbye. I closed the door, leaned against it, and just breathed. No tears. No shaking. Just relief. But the peace didn't last long. That night my phone lit up with messages from extended family. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in years. A cousin I barely remembered. Somehow the story had traveled. Not the truth, of course, but my parents' version. The cold, ungrateful daughter who slammed the door in their faces when all they needed was a roof over their heads. "Family takes care of each other," one message said. "You'll regret this when they're gone," another read. It would have crushed me 10 years ago. Even 5. Now I just turned the phone over and let it buzz. By the end of the week the texts had evolved from guilt-tripping to full-blown hostility. Apparently my parents had told everyone that I was too proud to help them in a time of need. That I was flush with money, and had forgotten where I came from. One message even accused me of being just like those rich snobs on TV who abandon their families for granite countertops and overpriced wine. That one made me laugh. I lived in a modest house. I still drove a 10-year-old Honda. The most expensive thing I owned was probably my espresso machine, and that had been a gift to myself after a grueling freelance contract that nearly broke me. But truth didn't matter. Not to them. Not when there was a better story to tell. What surprised me most was the call I got from Adam. He rarely reached out. Not on holidays, not on birthdays, not even after my promotion last year that made industry headlines. I figured he was too busy pretending to be the startup king in whatever city he'd moved to this time. So when his name popped up on my screen, I let it ring the first time. He called again. I answered. "Hey," he said. No greeting, no catching up. Just that casual, half-bored tone he'd always used with me. "What do you want, Adam?" A pause. Then, "You really told them they couldn't stay?" I waited. "Yes." He laughed. A single sharp chuckle like I'd just confessed to robbing a bank. "Damn," he said. "I didn't think you had it in you." There was something in his voice I couldn't quite place. Not admiration. Not anger exactly. More like mild amusement. As if this whole thing was a show he'd forgotten he was part of. "They said you slammed the door in their faces," he added. "I closed the door," I said flatly, after asking them to leave. Adam hummed like he was weighing that. "I mean," he continued, "it's kinda brutal, right? They're old. They're not doing great financially." I didn't respond. "I'm just saying," he pressed, "they might have made mistakes, but they're still mom and dad." There it was. The line. The golden child's reflex. Protect the throne. Defend the crown. "They didn't make mistakes," I said quietly. "They made choices, repeated ones, and I lived with every single one of them." He sighed. "You always were dramatic." That did it. "You want to house them?" I snapped. "Be my guest. Let them live with you. Just make sure your wife's okay with it first." Silence. That shut him up. I hung up before he could recover. The following weekend I stopped by my favorite coffee shop. The barista, Kayla, a bright-eyed college kid who always added extra foam to my cappuccino, handed me a pastry bag along with my drink. "It's from the lady over there," she whispered. I turned. There she was. My mother. She was seated alone by the window, looking smaller than I remembered. Her hands were folded on her lap, and her coat was too thin for the weather. She looked up and smiled softly. I almost turned and walked out. But something made me cross the room. I didn't sit down, just stood by her table, coffee in hand, pulse ticking in my ears. "Please," she said before I could speak. I just wanted a moment. I nodded once. "Talk." She looked down at her hands. "I know we haven't been fair to you," she began. "I know we made mistakes. A lot of them. And I'm not here to argue or defend, I just—" She trailed off, cleared her throat. "We lost everything, you know. The investments, the savings, your father's pension. We're living in a motel out near the freeway." I waited. I thought if I explained, if you could just hear it from me, maybe you'd see we're not trying to take advantage. We just didn't know where else to go. I let the silence sit between us. Then I said, "You knew where I lived for the last 6 years. You never reached out. Not when I got the job. Not when I bought the house. Not even when I was in the hospital with pneumonia." She looked away. "And now you're here because you lost your backup plan." Her eyes filled with tears. "We were wrong." "Yes," I said. "You were." She looked up, almost hopeful. "But I'm not here to fix it," I added. "I can't be the one to clean up the mess you made. Not again." A long silence. Then she nodded. "I understand." I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I've always been proud. I just didn't know how to say it." I paused, just for a second. Then I walked away. 3 weeks after I saw my mother at the cafe, I got a call from the bank. Not the usual fraud department nonsense or credit offer. This was the mortgage department. "Hi, Ms. Harris. We're just calling to confirm the second name added to the deed on your property. We processed the request 2 days ago, and you should receive confirmation paperwork in the mail this week." I sat up in my chair. "I'm sorry. What?" "The name change request. Co-owner authorization. It came through on Monday morning, signed and notarized." "I didn't request anything," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I live alone. No one is authorized." The line went silent for a second. "That's highly irregular," the agent finally said. "Let me flag this for fraud review immediately." It didn't take long to unravel. The signature on the deed addendum was forged. Poorly. My name was misspelled in one place, and the notary stamp had been lifted from an old medical document my mother still had from my surgery 5 years ago. They'd scanned it, altered it, used it to pretend I had given co-ownership of my house to them. Them. My parents. I filed a police report. Froze all property-related transactions. Called a lawyer. By Friday it was confirmed. They had used my birth certificate, an old address form I left behind in their garage years ago, and even a scan of my expired ID, all cobbled together to try and insert themselves onto my deed. They weren't just trying to move in. They were trying to own it. I didn't call them. I drove. Their motel wasn't hard to find. A sagging 2-story building with rusted balcony rails and faded yellow numbers on the door. Room 6. My father opened it. His expression didn't shift when he saw me. Maybe he'd been expecting this. I stepped inside. My mother was seated at the little desk, typing on an old laptop. She looked up and froze. "You really thought I wouldn't find out?" I asked, holding up the printout. She said nothing. My father crossed his arms. "We weren't trying to steal it," he said calmly. "We just needed a stake. A guarantee. A guarantee for what?" "For the future. For security," he said. "You wouldn't help us, so we helped ourselves. It's not like you don't owe us something after everything we did for you." I laughed. Loud. Bitter. "You mean everything you didn't do for me?" He took a step forward. "Watch your tone." I didn't flinch. "Or what? You'll steal something else?" My mother tried to play mediator. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. We just needed something to show the rental office for a place we were applying to. They required proof of assets. We wondered if your name was on it." "You forged legal documents," I snapped. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime." "It was a desperate mistake," she said quietly. "And we're sorry." "No," I said. "You're sorry you got caught." I turned to leave but paused in the doorway. "I have a lawyer now, and I've filed charges. So let me be clear. If you contact me, show up again, or so much as breathe in my direction, I will press forward with full prosecution. You've taken enough from me." My father muttered something under his breath, but I didn't ask what. I walked out. Let the door slam behind me. The next week, I changed the locks. Had surveillance cameras installed. My lawyer pushed to get a restraining order. The police advised me to keep records of any contact. But then something unexpected happened. The story got out. Not from me, but from the notary public whose stolen stamp was used. She posted a warning on a community Facebook group about elder scammers forging property transfers. The post went semi-viral, and within days several people from my parents' social circle, church, extended family, old neighbors, suddenly reached out to apologize. They had believed my parents' story, that I was cold, arrogant, and ungrateful, that I had abandoned them in a time of need, that I owed them everything. But now they saw the truth. Turns out when you try to steal your own child's house, even small-town gossip mills can't spin that into sympathy. One of my old aunts called me. "I always wondered why you stayed away," she said. "Now I know. I'm sorry we didn't ask sooner." My parents didn't try again, not directly, but Adam did. He sent me a short text, a single line. They were desperate. "You didn't have to go that far." I blocked the number. Because the truth was, I hadn't gone far enough. I had been patient. I had been quiet. I had swallowed a decade of disappointment and still managed to build something with no help from anyone. And when the people who helped break me came back to take the only thing I'd ever truly owned, I drew a line. They crossed it. And now, they get to live on the other side of it. Permanently.